Shalom, Yadid. Shalom. I am Brother Isaiah, also known as Mr. Blacktastic or Yeshaya. Welcome, beloved. I'm a born again Messianic Israelite follower of Adonai Yeshua HaMashiach, also known as the Lord Jesus Christ. I believe Almighty God is awakening a remnant of scattered Israel as dry bones in a valley to their identity as natural descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as part of the promised seed of faith. I believe the greater portion of this awakening remnant of Israel are Negro, slave, and immigrant descendants in the Western world. I believe this awakening is to bring together Israelite and Gentile believers as one in Christ to fulfill Scripture before the imminent return of Christ to reign on earth and before the final judgment. It is my sincere prayer that through the ministry of the Scriptures by the Holy Spirit, I may serve my generation as a prophetic voice to awaken Israel and all in need of salvation through the gospel of Yeshua Mashiach. On this platform, I will be teaching or discussing scripture, history, and other relevant issues. I pray you receive insight, inspiration, and faith by the word in the name of Adonai Yeshua. So, shalom, beloved. Good to be here with you all on this great day. And a great day it is indeed, because truly this is the day that Adonai has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. And we have a great program on tonight. Let's see who we got here in the chat so far joining with us. Shalom, Sister Stephanie. Good to see you. Shalom, Sister Shetla. Good to see you. Who else we got in here? Shalom, Kimbler. Good to see you. All right. All right, good to see you. Sister E, what's happening, Sister E? Good to see you. All right, shalom, Yvette. Good to see you. Shalom, Lynn. All right, family, good to see you too. Good to see you, Susan. Shalom. All right, and anyone else is coming in or anyone that I missed, oh, there we go. Here we go, some more folks. I guess it's just catching up. Shalom, Nicole. Hey, what's going on? You know what, Nicole? I'm gonna call your people in Jersey. You're gonna stop talking about me. This is an inside joke. She always talking smack. Shalom, Cam. Cam 2 player, my good friend and sister Judy. I wasn't trying to miss you. All right. I told you I wear glasses, but they do not afford me superpowers. So just because I might miss you, it's charging to my head and not to my heart. Shalom, Joy. Good to see you. Shalom, my brother Dale. Good to see you. All right. And good to see my brother Yasun in the building. All right. Now, anybody else that's coming in afterwards, I might miss you. But shalom, shalom, shalom to everybody that came, is coming, and we'll listen to this later on a replay. Shalom to everybody. All right. I got y'all. So we got all the shaloming out. All right. So now we're going to bring on, without any further delay or ado, our prestigious and illustrious panel of readers here on tonight. All right. And we got here, all right, a dynamic duo of family indeed, my brother Aerospike, and with him is his lovely bride and companion in life, Sister Pam.
Yeah.
With him.
Yeah, we're having a little trouble with the tablet, but she will be on momentarily.
All right, not a problem. All right, and then we got my man, Big Red. That's what I said. Big Red, Big Red, Big Red.
How you doing?
What's going on, brother? Good to see you. And last but not least, we got the queen from the Midwest, not the East. And that's none other than Ruhama. Good to see you, beloved.
Hello, everyone.
All right. All right, so we got a great. It's going to be, these readings tonight are going to be a bit intense because they all have a common theme. I'm sitting here getting myself situated here in this chair that's rolling around, but they have a common theme, and you'll probably hear it as you listen to the readings. And the first reading has a little bit extra to help you understand from the interviewer's perspective. And then after the readers are done and we've discussed what we've heard, then I'm going to also read an excerpt from a book that's going to kind of help explain what it is we just heard from a social and psychological perspective because sometimes when you're reading these readings, and as we were talking prior to the show, it can kind of get you in emotional places where you can start judging the people who are giving the testimonies and narratives based on the things that they're saying, because we're looking at it from our perspective today. But you have to understand too what they were dealing with. And then there's the long game of slavery. There's the short game, which is the immediate payoff of free labor by captured people. And then there's the long term or the long game of slavery, which works through the advent of white supremacy, which is the purpose of it is not only to enslave a group of people physically and use them for free labor, but after that period has ended, because they always knew that physical slavery would not be tenable permanently or perpetually. But what they did was a cold psychological game to, even after you were free physically, you were still enslaved mentally. And you're going to hear a lot of that, in fact, on tonight. All right. So first of all, let's have everybody say something. How y'all feeling this week? Give us a little update report, because we had Sister Ruama she was out for a minute, but she back in stride again. So what's going on, family? Talk to me.
Not too much. You just decided get a chance to do this again. I think we haven't done this spring. I think it was last time we did, or very early summer.
Yeah, it's been a couple months.
It's been a minute.
Yes, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. And people were asking me about it. And I said, man, you know what? We do have to get back to that. We definitely got to get back to that. And I, for one, have been waiting to get back to it. So what's happening? Everybody is in different parts of the country too, which is why this is so beautiful. Because through the advent of technology, we get to have these miniature family reunions.
Reunion.
With our people, and I love it.
So I'm singing Reunited. And it feels so.
I'm in the Middle West.
The Middle West. All right.
Middle West.
The Middle West. Up there where they sell all that cheese and sausage.
We're in Illinois.
All right. Let me see here. Somebody said, Pam. There she is.
Sister Pam in the house. Hey.
There she is.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's going on? What's going on?
Just lovely.
Tell us what I need to hear from you, darling.
Marvelous.
See, we got accents popping tonight. See, that's why you all are reading and I'm not, because nobody's here. See, I talk like they used to talk in slavery for real. I talk like that for real. That people can't tell when I'm reading or just talking for real. So
You're good.
But yeah, so I am, like I said, I'm excited for tonight. I think tonight is going to be very eye-opening for a lot of people. It's going to be very eye-opening. So, and look, we got a few other people coming in to the room. I think Enosh Ben Israel, good to see you. Shalom, beloved. Good to see you as well. So we still got more Yadid coming in, and some people are just sitting in silence and listening, and that's perfectly okay, because at the time that it is, it's about 7:11, ironically, here on the East Coast or Eastern Standard Time, and so throughout the country here, people in different time zones. Those are our brothers and sisters on the West Coast. It's still about 4 in the p.m. and it's nice and sunny out there. All right. And we may have people listening to us from across the pond and different things. So I do get feedback. Actually, someone from Africa was listening to us out there in Ghana. So, it's amazing how many people, you never know who is listening. Your voices will go places that you never will, and they will reach people that you'll never meet. So when you do these things, just understand that the Most High is using you. And he's using you in a very powerful way. Like the scripture says in the book of Romans chapter 10, their voices went out into all the world. So your voices are going out into all the world. All right. So we're going to get right into it. All right. And Ruama, you ready, my sister?
Sir.
You ready? Okay, so without further ado or delay, we're going to bring Sister Ruama's going to do our first reading. I want to make sure I get it on the screen nice and big. All right. So I'll take all of us off the screen, but you'll still be in the studio. All right. And Ruama,
Yes, sir.
whenever you're ready.
All right, here we go. Drusilla and Richard Martin. And pardon my voice because it's trying to act weird on me ever since that stuff. An interview with Drusilla Martin, age 102, and Richard Martin, age 92, Poplar Bluff, Missouri. I's half Indian, and I look it too. And if I wore gold in my ears and nose, I would look just like my mammy did, because she was full-blooded Indian. I don't know what kind, but she was big and tall and had black hair. She could sit on it, and it was close as a mule's tail. She carried a tomahawk, and everyone stepped to one side when they met her on the turnpike. She was from Giles County, Tennessee. Giles County, hear me. And her name was Ira Lou Ellen. My father's name was Spencer Johnson. Don't guess I seen much about him because Mammy and him weren't married. We stayed on for Mars Pinter. From the time I remember till the war closed and we were free. And you had better never let Mars hear you call us slaves. He'd not stand for it. Hear me. We didn't farm, exactly. Did raise our eats, and that was all because the nearest trading post was Nashville, Tennessee. And that was a long way them days. I had 9 brothers and sisters, and they was Monroe Henderson. He was the house servant. Jefferson, Ida, Philia, Laura, Azora, and I don't remember the other 2. Guess they died when they was babies, but all we was named the same names as Ma's Pinter kids. And we played with them. Hear me. We played with them. Then when I was big enough, I was put to carding wool and cotton. We wasn't paid no money for our work. We didn't need none. We had everything we needed and plenty of good stuff to eat and good warm clothes to wear. Them nigger boys was so proud to belong to Mars Pinter that they would break up white rocks and scatter them on the turnpike and make nice white shiny walks for missus. When the carriage was ordered out for a drive, first Mammy walk out with a white cloth, rub it over the carriage. Better not find a speck of dirt on the carriage. Mammy always taught all her white and dark children, when entering the presence of elders, to make your obedience and then sit quiet. Men them days wore long hair too, but sometimes they cut it off if it got too long and hot. They would turn a milk crop down over their head and even it off some. We didn't know nothing about the war. We didn't want to leave Mars, and that was all the difference it made to us. I do remember old Jeff Davis came to Mars and said, "Give me them niggers, and I will carry them down to Fort Pillow and hide them in the cave until this is over." Then Mars run them off and said, "Bet not put any of my people in a cave. They worked for me and made all my money. I'm going to do right by these people." Where we live, we never heard tell of a form school, never needed nothing like that. Didn't know what one was. One thing I does remember well and would like to know if anyone else there remembers it. I went with my Missy Pinter to see them hang John Brown. He was a Whig, and they brought him from the Culpeper County Courthouse in Virginia and hung him to a beechwood tree at Harper's Ferry on the bank of the James River. Now they sing hung him to a sour apple tree, but that ain't right. I saw it. I know. I said a while ago, what we wasn't paid no money, but I did know what it was because Mars never put lock or key on his cellar door. And he kept food and his money in the small barrels down there. And we could play with it, and never once did anyone try and take any of it. I learned to iron too. And there was 2 women stood there ironing every day. They sure couldn't make them purty lace broidery underskirts stand alone. My mammy was in full charge of the house and all the Marset children. And when they pass her, she say, lift your dress. Then if she see little spot, dirt, or wrinkle, make them take off all their clothes and change. Then she say, take off your shoe, smell their feet. Ha! She called Lisa, bring that foot tub. Then she would wash and dry their feet and put on clean stockings. Mammy was clean as a new pin. When I got any size to notice, I was dumb confounded to hear my mammy talk up to the white boys coming to court Missy Pinter's girls. Mammy met them at the door and said, what you want? They say, I come to call on Miss. She say, what you got make you think got right to call on my fine daughter? What you on? Can you hire her work done? Do you think my daughter is going to marry any poor white trash and have to work hard all her life? Then if he could have given a good account for himself, Mammy would swing her tomahawk and yell, be gone, don't come back. Another thing, a young man had better not come courting in his shirt sleeve. Better have on his coat or Mammy would back in his head. Then after the war was over, we was free. It wasn't hard to find work. I was always honest and religious, belonged to the Southern Baptist Church. I got work among the rich white people and traveled with them. Then I worked as a laundress in the U.S. Marine Hospital in St. Louis for 7 years. I worked on the Chas P. Choteau steamboat as a chambermaid and made lots of trips to Florida. I was made for Mrs. Bush in St. Louis, and they was powerful rich. They made that beer up there. Richard says he was born May 8, 1845 on the corner of Beale and Main Street, Memphis, Tennessee. I was born May 8, 1835 in Gills County, Tennessee. We neither one have much bad treatment, but we is glad slavery is over.
That was good. That was very good.
Oh my gosh.
That's an intense reading.
That's very intense because I didn't know if to be mad at the lady or like she, her mom. I mean, it's like, wow. Because it's just it's a bit much. It's like they were treated well, but they were slaves. They were enslaved, and they didn't know that this isn't a normal, that people shouldn't own other people, and you don't raise other people's children, and those were, it's just so many levels to this. Do you want me to read the interviewer's note, or is that?
Yes, because that right there is going to be very important to understanding understanding the background to this particular one. And like you said, this is why these were picked out, because these tonight are going to touch us in a different way and make us think.
See, because it made me think. I felt some kind of way. I mean, they didn't know any better, but I felt angry a little bit and just, yeah. But I'll read the interviewer's note.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, y'all.
So we got the interviewer's notes. No, it's okay, because we having discussion, and this is good because, like I said, we need to talk about this, and this is history. These are things that actually happened and took place. And so next, the interviewer's notes going to bring some more light to the narrative that Wama just read. Okay. You ready, woman of God?
Sure. Called on and talked to Richard and Drusilla Martin, old-time Negroes who were slaves. They talked fluently, really enjoying talking about the good old days, or the good days, as they put it. As they say, their master was good to them. Richard is rather short and wears a beard, which is snow white. He claims to be something better than 90 years old. He says he's about 94 or 5. And Drusilla is 10 years older than Richard. About 4 or 5 years ago, their home, which they owned, was destroyed by fire. And having no insurance, they have since been living in a poor substitute for a house made of pieces of tin, wood, and old boxes built under the branches of a tree. Richard was in a hurry to go to town and see if their old age pension checks had come yet and invited us to come back some other time. Drusilla said she was the slave of John Pointer. Her mother, who was part Indian, wore a ring in her nose and carried a tomahawk, had 10 children, and mothered the 10 children of her master's wife. Drusilla does not remember much about her father, as he was the slave of another family. Although Drusilla does not have any education, she can quote verse after verse from the Bible. She told some gruesome stories of how some of the masters treated their slaves. She said there never was a book printed that really told how some, or in fact the majority of the slaves, were beaten and abused. To most masters, they were not any more than stock. She said some of the young girls were beaten until they would die. Some of the little colored babies that were born out in the field or on the road were left to starve or to be eaten up by the hogs. Ooh. Drusilla said sometimes their masters would rent them out to other white men to work them if he didn't have anything for them to do. Some masters would put their feed out in troughs for them, just as they were feeding cattle. Some would give them cottonseed to eat. She said they would go home and cry and tell their master how they were treated, and their master would tell them they wouldn't have to go work for anyone that did them like that. In 1865, when the slaves were freed, Drusilla said she felt all out in the world as if she did not have a place to go, and their master was afraid to let them stay with him, even though they begged to stay, as it was then against the law. She was sent to St. Louis to do servant work for a white family that was very wealthy, and she stayed with them for 20 years. Drusilla has been married twice and is the mother of 10 children, but knows of only one daughter, or rather, she was the last one she heard from out of the 3 that she thinks are still living. And that was 50 years ago. The aged old couple are going to receive $8 apiece per month old age pension and a check for $80 back pay. When Worker asked Drusilla what was she going to do with her pension money, she said she was going to build a little house, as Mammy is tired living in that shack. When we got up to leave, the old Negro Mammy ran out and fell down and kissed our feet. There were 2 workers stumbling along trying to get down the rocky path that leaves the little shack, with their eyes full of tears and the muscles of their throats tightened until they could only wave back as a feeble voice was heard to ring out over the hill. "Honey, Charles, come back to see Mammy some more, and she'll give you all something out of her garden." Oh, my God. Oh, Lord.
Lord.
Oh, my.
Family?
Man.
So y'all give me your thoughts on this one. Because the interviewer's notes, and this is why I said this one, I was so glad the interviewer's notes were there, because it brought to light things that we didn't hear the Drusilla talk about. You notice Richard didn't do any of the talking.
Yeah.
And so and then think about how they started off talking about the slaves remembered the good old days.
Yes.
But look at what the good old days were filled with.
Right.
They didn't even know anything.
That's what I picked up. What they did to the children. I mean, the whole. Oh.
Feed them to the hogs. That's another reason to give up pork.
Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
Wicked, wicked, wicked. Mm.
Big time.
That's heavy.
Mm. Mm.
That's heavy.
I mean,
Can
she.
y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, okay. I was just making sure. That's heavy.
I mean, to
Wow.
have 10 children and then only know of one daughter. You have children. I mean, I couldn't imagine. And then you get separated, and it's just common practice. She didn't know her father. You know, I mean, it was so common practice because he belonged to a different family. I
Mhm.
mean,
That's very common.
it's like it was just so common. You know what I mean? It was their
Yeah,
normal, but it's so horrible for that to be a normal.
right. And I mean, and the kicker being now when they say like, and there are no fathers in homes and all this other stuff. I'm like, look back at y'all history. You started this mess.
That part.
Yeah.
You
Right.
did this. You set this up for this to happen. So if you want to ask that question, look in the mirror.
The destabilization of the families, of the black family. It's still going on. And what is
Yeah.
that, the 13th Amendment? I mean, they just kept going on and on. It's like oh, I just felt so bad for her. I mean, because she felt her mom was, full-blooded Indian, but that still didn't, change her narrative. It didn't help anything. It's like people were enslaved. They were owned.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Their mother was still a slave. You
And a
know.
mammy
And yeah, she was still a slave. The children were still slaves.
and mammies. I mean, it's like it just makes me more determined to lose the mammy mindset, you
Mm,
know, like
That was the name of my great grandmother.
mammy.
Mhm. That was her
Yeah.
name. That's what everybody called her.
really.
Mhm. I still to this day do not know her real name.
Oh,
Wow, that's deep, Pam.
that is deep here.
I mean, you think about a lot of these terms and like mammy and different things, and think about how they get into our vernacular, our vocabulary, and then think about what they thought. And one of the saddest parts of this, when I first read it, the interview, I'm serious. I was by myself reading this, and I was trying not to cry. But when he said that they kissed their feet, the
Yes.
interviewer said
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah, that right
Mm-mm.
there.
I
Ooh,
just, I said to myself, Lord have mercy. And this is why I was saying in the beginning, the psychological effects of slavery far exceed the physical effects. The physical parts leave scars on your body, but the psychology leaves scars on the minds of generations.
Yep.
Yes.
goodness. What is it? Post-traumatic slave syndrome?
Yes, yes.
That is true. That's the real stuff.
I mean, it's why you still have colorism. It's
Yes.
why
Mhm.
you have people that hate on their own people and, say the same stupid stuff that, the conservatives and ignorant white folks say just
Mhm.
blindly. When you're a black person and you say something, you got to prove it 9 times. Which way you got to have 80 proofs. If you're a white person, people will believe you
Instantly.
just off instant. Yeah. We got to come with all kinds of facts. White dude said, and they'll be like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, he was a PhD, so I believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it differently too. The way I look at it is when our minds have been colonized and we don't even know it, and we make excuses for like a person
Mhm.
who's displaying racist behavior or just doing stuff, and we make these excuses, and we're saying, oh well, they didn't know any better, or well, and then I have to constantly check myself now, because it's like, no, they can learn just like I can pick up a book and learn, or they can know better, they can do better. I don't have to make an excuse for them. You don't look at me and tell me my head wrap looks like Aunt Jemima.
No, you just go home and silently pray for them, and you go home and ask God to save them. You don't say anything to correct them. You don't teach them anything. You just go secretly and pray, please, white Jesus, bring them to the knowledge.
So I made up my mind, and I was talking to someone in my HR department. I said, it's not my job. I shouldn't be tasked with educating them.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
On what is appropriate behavior.
Correct.
I said, it's not my job. And I brought some other things to light that are going to be addressed, because I'm like, I'm not your mammy. I'm not here to mammy anybody. I'm not here to coddle you. It's been hard. It's hard on those that come behind us. Our children, our grandchildren have to face this racism early on. It's like, it's perpetual. And educate yourself. I said to the HR, I said, we work around people who they don't really even know about the community,
right,
or Black people. They just see us at work, and then that's, you don't know the things that go on, that even in the community that I go into work, that I've been profiled.
Yep.
But they don't have that experience.
Right.
So to me, it's been a learning curve, when it's like I shouldn't have to explain, and I told them also that, I don't know, I'm just talking, I'm so sorry. But they had this so-called meeting, and it was an online Zoom, and of course they had to quote the mild Martin Luther King quotes. And that was for me. I'm like, this is one of those fluffy kumbaya moments. Everyone's grinning, all the Negroes. We got to start singing these spirituals now, because this is one of those, oh yes, and didn't we do a good meeting? We sure had a great meeting. We discussed and we just really accomplished nothing. My mindset, but I was so hot, and I began to realize that things aren't going to change if I don't say something. I mean, I'm just maybe a little drop in the bucket. But if I'm tasked to say something, I need to be honest with it, and I want to articulate it. Because truthfully, I mean, we have every right to be as angry as they try to denote us, but it's like, it's not, I don't want to hurt anybody or do anything crazy, but it's like, I want to say, hey, there's pain,
right,
and there's, and it's not something that you could just get over. Oh, just get over. Oh, slavery was so long ago. It's like, no, it's not so long ago. It's and things are still happening. There's still injustices. My daughter just recently, one of my oldest daughter, she was just recently harassed by some Trump supporters coming from Minnesota, and she's the one who got the ticket, and she had to fight it in court. Stuff like that happens.
people don't understand that. What that pressure on your daughter, having to go through that, fighting those people off. Just like
it was like they were road raging. There was like 2 or 3 different. It was really crazy. And she just told me recently. I'm like, that kind of stuff will just have you go buy more hair dye, because it just turns everything white.
Yeah. I put this comment that our sister Shonda said, we are continually told how to feel and think. That didn't stop with slavery.
Yes, sir.
That is a 1000% true statement, because I don't think anyone else has been on the face of this planet more than us have been told how to think and how to feel, what doesn't matter, what to get over. But everybody else has been given reparations and all kinds of things for the feelings they can't get over and for how they think. And we've been given absolutely nothing but empty promises and lies every 2 years, every 4 years, whatever the election cycle is.
Yes.
And then we constantly see our people being brutalized and mistreated on a regular basis. I mean, we just had recently here the paraplegic brother.
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
Awful.
You know, by the
you
police.
would talk about it.
You know, and I didn't even want to see the video because I knew how I was going to feel, but I just end up having to, you know, accidentally seeing the video anyway. And then other people had sent it to me. And I knew then that based on the people who were sending me the video, the kind of chord that it had struck with all of us universally, because it wasn't the kind of thing that, you know, any of us can ignore.
Right.
It hits you in a place that's so deep that only somebody that has your common background would understand, because we have a shared experience, you know. And it just, I just don't. I'm so mad about that right now. Oh man, I'm so mad about that right now.
Yes.
That went through
No, I
my
feel
brain
you.
when I saw it, you know. It really, I had to really pray and ask God. I'm still asking God to help sanitize my mind, I guess, because all of my thoughts was just bad.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah, it doesn't put you in a too good of a place. But I was listening to Darby today, the 400-year, that one, and he was saying he prays, judge, y'all judge that. Well, he don't say y'all, but judge that situation. I think that's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah.
For the Most High to judge these situations. You know, it's no, oh, we're just gonna pray for them and then put the camera in the man's face. Well, how do you feel about this? Like,
I mean,
be quiet. Don't put it in my face because they know. Oh, Father. Oh.
Man, don't ask me a question because they will get the look. They're like, how do you feel about that? Woo! I'm like,
Psalm 109. Psalm
thank you.
109.
Bash that
Thank
door
you.
against the
There it
stone.
is.
Put
Yes,
them in the
ma'am.
zoos. Let them be fed to alligators.
yeah, exactly. You know, and so, I mean, the trauma is real. And then, like I said, you see in this reading that we just had the psychological impact.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being treated like that and then thinking that was the good old days?
Good old
Right.
days.
I mean,
Make America great.
yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And so you got to think now. Now think about this. As
Yeah, well, in
bad
comparison to
as
what?
what the interviewer's notes brought out, for a former slave to say that was the good old days, think about how bad it actually had to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
If it
Yep.
was that bad and they called that the good old days,
Good old
Right.
days.
think
In
about how bad
comparison
the
to
bad
what?
old days were.
Yep.
We can't even fathom what they went through. We can't, like I said, we seeing stuff now, but just to, I mean, like I said again, we seeing that video of the paraplegic brother, and then you hearing things like this again, like you said, praying, say, "Y'all, please sanitize my mind," because the thoughts in there were not peaceful and loving and just. It was just like, load up.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
see,
why wasn't he believed? Why didn't they believe him? He said, I'm paraplegic. I mean, we've seen so many times, anybody over 20 has probably seen so many different various encounters. And depending on what town or region, you probably seen them, not just on YouTube, but just you've seen things. You've seen police harass people, whatever. I thought everybody got harassed. I thought it. I was so naive, but they didn't believe him. It's like, I'm a paraplegic. And he said, he tried to give them everything they needed. And no, that it was unacceptable. Why was it unacceptable? Because his skin.
they had to humiliate the man. They had to humiliate the man and abuse him. And I mean, I just, I'm just at a loss for words, because it's just like with everything that happened just in the last few years, you would think that police officers would have better sense. But when you see these things, you realize the society is not moving forward and getting better. It takes one step forward and two steps backwards.
Yeah.
And so this is the trauma, that we're seeing, but it also, and I do pray for justice. And see, and I understand better now why the Lord says, vengeance is mine, surely I will repay. And why those martyrs in Revelation were saying, Lord, how long before, you get for what they've done, because the desire for vengeance is in me.
Yes.
But the way I would go about getting it would be so, it would be so cruel that I understand the Lord has told us not to take revenge because to save us, because we would exact such a cruel punishment on our abusers and oppressors, and I mean, because I'm telling you, because this is even the most peaceful and docile person of us. If you put in consideration all the things that have happened, over our lifetimes and throughout our history, and they did like they did Jews in the book of Esther, and said, "Hey, y'all can defend yourself however you got to do it."
Oh my gosh!
I mean, I would go crazy. I mean, and that's why I understand better now why the Lord said, "No, don't you go out and do it," because I'm gonna take care of this because I don't want you to do it because I need to save you. So I got to keep you from doing it. I'm going to take care of it, because of all the pain that's wrapped up in it, And Brother Enosh, shalom and blessings to you, brother. He said, that one really bothered him. He said because he's paraplegic, and man, something like that. See how close to home that is. And the thing about it, like Sister Joyce said, they can stop, but they won't. And so you got to ask, this kind of wickedness, So let's get to the next narrative here. All right. The next narrative, Sister Beloved of the Most High says she still be fair. I don't know if I can be fair, Sister Beloved, because they haven't been fair to us. And I think that's why the Most High don't want us taking vengeance, because oh my goodness, I would be horrible. I'm just going to tell y'all the truth. I would be very, very bad. The Most High ever gave us Esther Day. I just call it that. Okay. Bad. All right. So my brother, Big Red, you got it, brother. Take it on for here.
All right. Life experience excels at all reading. Every place you go, you learn something from every class of people. Books are just for a memory to keep history and the like. But I don't have to go hunting in libraries. I got one in my own head. And you can't forget what you learn from experience. The old man speaking is a living example of his theory, and judging from his bearing, his experience has given him a philosophical outlook which comprehends love, gentleness, and wisdom. Charles H. Anderson, 3122 Fredonia Street, was born December 23rd, 1845, in Richmond, Virginia, as a slave belonging to J.L. Woodson, grocer, an exceedingly good owner, not cruel to anyone. With his mother, father, and 15 brothers and sisters, he lived at the Woodson home in the city, some of the time in the cabin in the rear, but mostly in the big house, favored of all the slaves. He was trusted to go to the cash drawer for spending money and permitted to help himself to candy and all he wanted to eat. With the help of the mistress, his mother made all his clothes, and he was about as well dressed as anybody. I always associated with high-class folks, but I never went to church then or a school day in my life. My owner never sent me or my brothers, and then when free schools came in, education wasn't on my mind. I just didn't think about education. Now I read a few words and I can write my name, but experience is what counts most. Tapping the porch with his cane for emphasis, the old fellow's softly slurred words fell rapidly but clearly. Sometimes his tongue got twisted and he had to repeat. Often he had to switch his pipe from one side of his mouth to the other, for as he explained, there ain't many toothers left in there. Mr. Anderson is rather slight of build, and his features are fine, his bald head shiny, and his eyes bright and eager. Though he says he ain't much good anymore, he seems a half century old instead of 92 next December, if I can make it. I have been having some sick spells lately, snapped 3 or 4 ribs out of place several years ago, and was in bed for 6 weeks after my wife died 10 years ago. But my stepdaughter and her nurse helps me through it. Doctor says he doesn't see how doctor says he don't see how I keep on living, but they take good care of me, my sons and stepdaughter. They live here with me and we're comfortable, neat and clean. They are in the trimmest little frame house on the street, painted gray with green trim, having a square of green lawn in the front and another in the back, enclosed with a rail fence, gay flowers, in the corners, rubbing plants in the pots on the corner on the porch, and grape arbor down on one side of the backyard. Inside, rust-colored mohair, overstuffed chairs, and Davenport look prim with white crocheted dollies. A big clock with weights stand in one corner of an ornately carved table, and several enlarged frame photographs hang on the wall. The other 2 rooms are the combined kitchen and dining room, and a bedroom with a heatrola in it to warm an old man's bones. Additional bedrooms are upstairs, pointing to the one pictures he remarked, "That was me at 37. Had it taken for my boss when I worked. It was a postcard, and then I had it enlarged for myself. That was just before I married Helen. Helen Comer, nee Cruitt, was a widow with 4 youngsters when he met her 54 years ago. 1 year later, they were married and had 2 boys. Charles, now 47, employed as an auto repairman, and Samuel, 43, a sorter in the post office, both bachelors. Yes, sir, I was so healthy looking in them days. Always strong, never took a dollar's worth of medicine in 50 years or more till I had these last 6 spells. But we had good living in slave days. In one sense, we was better off then than after the war, because we had plenty to eat. Nowadays, everybody has to fend for himself, and they kill a man for a dime. Whip a slaves? Oh my God, don't mention it, don't mention it. Lots of them in Old Dominion got beatings for punishment. They didn't have no jails for slaves, but the owners used to whip and lash on them. I seen them on a chain gang too, up in the penitentiary, but I never got a whipping in my life. Used to help around the grocers and deliver groceries. Used to go up to Jeff Davis' house every day, and he was a fine man, always good to me. And then I never quarreled with anybody. Always minding my own business, and I was never scared of nothing. Most folks were superstitious, but I've never believed in ghosts or anything I didn't see. Never wore a charm, never took much time in that kind of business. The old people used to carry potatoes and keep off of rheumatism. Yes, sir, they had real Irish potato and carry it till it was hard as a rock. And then they say never get rheumatism. Saturday was our busy day at the store. But after work, I used to go down to the drag downs. So some people say hold down or dig down. I guess because they dig right in it and give it all they got. I was a great at hand fiddling. Got one in there now that was 107 years old, but I haven't played for years. Since I broke my shoulder bone, I can't handle the bow. But I used to play all the drag downs. Anything I heard, I played once, I could play. Used to play 2 steps, and one of them called Devil's Dreams, and 3 to 4 good German waltzes and turkey and straw. But we didn't call it that then. It was the same piece, but I forget what we called it. They don't play the same nowadays. Playing now is just a time consumer. That's all they got it all. Tore to pieces, no top or bottom to it. We used to play games too. Ring games at play parties, ring around the rosy, chase the squirrel, and holly golly. Never heard of holly golly? Well, they passed around the peanuts, and whoever get 3 nuts in one shell had to give one to the one who had started the game. Then they passed around again, and just a peanut eating contest, sort of. Abraham Lincoln? Well, there's people born in this world for every occupation, and Lincoln was a natural born man for the job he completed. Just check it back to Pharaoh's time. There was Moses born to deliver the children of Israel. And John Brown, he was born for a purpose. So they said he was cruel all the way through, and they hung him in February 1859. That created a great sensation, and he said, "Go ahead, do your work. I done mine." Then they whipped round till they got the war started, and that was when the start of the Civil War. I enlisted in April 10, 1865, and was sent to San Diego, Texas. But I was never in battle, and there was only time when I felt anyways skittish. That was when I was a new recruit on picket duty, and it was pitch dark, and I heard something coming through the bushes, and I thought, let them come, whoever it is. And I got my bayonet off ready, and I waited. I said, getting sort of nervous, and pretty soon the bushes open, and what you think come out? A great big old hog. In June 65, I got a cold one night and contracted this throat trouble I get. Never did get rid of it. Still carry it from the war. Got my first pension on that. $6 a month. Ain't many of us left to get pensions now. There's only 11 veterans left in Cincinnati. They used to be the Ku Klux Klan organization. That was the Pat Rollers when they called them the Night Riders, and at one time the Regulators. The old dragon, his name was Simons. He had control of it, and that continued on for 50 years till after the war when Garfield was president. Then it sprung up again. Now the King Bee is in prison. Well, after the war, I was free. But it didn't make much difference to me. I just had to work for myself instead of somebody else. And I just rambled around, sort of a floater. But I always worked, and I always eat regular, and I had regular rest. Work never hurt nobody. I lived so many places, Cleveland and every place, but I made it here longer than any place. 53 years. I worked on the railroad, Boston, always had men under me. With the Chesapeake and Ohio, throw that extension to the White Sulphur. We cut tracks through a tunnel 7 miles long, and I handled men in 83 when they put in the C&O through there. But since I was 71, I've been doing handiwork. Just general handyman. Used to do a lot of carving too, till I broke my shoulder bone. Carved that old pipe of mine 25 years ago out of an old umbrella handle, and carved this monkey ranch charm. But the last 3 years, I ain't done much anything. Gone to church sometimes over here, to the Corinthian Baptist Church or Walnut Hills. But church don't do much good nowadays. They got too much education for church. These newfangled education is just a bunch of ignorancy. Everybody's just looking for a string to pull to get something, not to help others. About 1/3 goes to see what everybody else is wearing and who got the nicest clothes. And they sit back and they say, what she thinks she look like with that thing on her head. The other 2/3, why, they just go for nonsense, I guess. Those who go for religion are scarce as chicken teeth. Yes, sir, they go for more sightseeing than soul saving. There's so much gingerbread work going on now. Our most prominent people came from the eastern part of the United States. All wise people come from the east, just as wise men did when the star Bethlehem appeared when Christ was born. And the farthest east you go, the more common knowledge persons got. There ain't no dreamboat. Nowadays, people getting crazy every day. We got too much liberty. It's all little you, big me. Everybody's got a right to his own opinion. And the old-fashioned way was good enough for my father, and it's good enough for me. If your back trail is clean, you don't need to worry about the future. Your future life is your past conduct. It's a trailer behind you, and I ain't quite dead yet. Effing I do smell bad.
Bravo,
Encore, both of y'all.
That was great.
That was good.
Oh, sister, you wrong.
I'm noticing a trend that he always gives you the Uncle Ruckus.
You wrong for that, sister.
Man.
Ooh.
The way he read the gay flowers part.
That was good.
I was so glad my mic was on mute.
Yes.
He sounded like he had a chalk of tobacco.
You know,
With a chalk.
No.
he gave a little list and everything.
Ooh.
And-
Yeah,
and
you
know
sounded
something?
like you had a couple teeth missing for real.
He got this. He getting this in.
Is the guy red too?
Yeah, and you know, when you go back up to look at this man's picture,
He looked
I could see him talking like that.
Yes.
And so the age and everything, if you notice, that looked like a Union hat from the Civil War on his head.
Oh.
It is.
Oh,
That's what it looks like.
And what's that? He got some medals hanging on his lapel.
Yeah, you know. And so man, that was I absolutely agree with Trust Cafe. That was amazing. That's amazing. You know, man, you and Ruwaba and you all do such a great job at reading, you know, and bringing these voices that have now been since long past to life, you know, so that we can, because it gives me great visuals. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know to get, you know, I visualize the people better in my head when I hear you all reading, you know, and man, you know, so some things that stood out to me about this reading, again, it was like, yeah, he said something. He was auditioning for the Boondocks. Yeah, if he ever does that, you need to definitely go and audition. If he brings the Boondocks back, brother, you definitely need to do that again, man. I'm serious, you know, because that was great, man. But some things that stood out to me in this reading is, again, now this guy was a house nigga.
Mm-hmm.
He was a house slave, you know, and y'all forgive me for using that word. I'm just using the term that, you know, they would have used for that, you know, for what this man was during his time in slavery. You know, and if you notice, one of the psychological things about the divide and conquer program of slavery and white supremacy is every slave wasn't treated the exact same.
Nope.
And that was to endear the ones who were treated better to the master, so that, you know, they could, you know, Trust said they could almost smell him at the end. He did say, I didn't smell that. You know, but that, you know, that always endeared them to the master. And then you can tell this guy probably pretty light skinned too. And we know that colorism thing was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood even now seems to be obsessed with interracial images, you know, to the point where you had, I think, you know, people like Zoe Saldana was portraying Nina Simone, and she did a terrible job at it too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they even had, you know, biracial people portraying Aaliyah, who wasn't biracial at all, and, you know, all these different things. And it's all of this divide and conquer stuff. So you have certain slaves who are treated better. Then what do you think the slaves who feel treated well would do when the slaves, the field Negroes, are out there? They're thinking about running away or rebelling. Now, this is a statistical fact. Every slave rebellion in the United States had a snitch.
Yep. And
only one was actually successful. And that was a slave rebellion that you don't hear very much about. Mm-hmm. And that was a gentleman named John Horse. And he rebelled down in Florida. And at that time, Florida was still a Spanish colony. But he had to take all those who were with him and flee to Mexico. And he was the only one that was able to pull off a successful type of rebellion, but they had to flee for their lives. But every slave revolt, from Nat Turner to whoever you can think of, all had slaves who snitched.
Yep.
Basically, who sold them out. Nat Turner was sold out. John Brown wasn't even a slave. He was a white man, but he was a righteous man who fought for the slaves. And, there's two people have already testified about his hanging, which did happen, I believe, about a year before the Civil War actually broke out. And John Brown, all of them were all undermined by someone because of these psychological games.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Think about, like I said, even with Gabriel Prosser in the early 1800s, Denmark Vesey, all of them got put down because some house Negro was like, "Massa, they gonna run."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at what he said. Even when the reading, he was like, things was better back in slavery, because a lot of people, it's even the same mindset that goes into now. Like, some people are just, that's why people stay on welfare. It's the new slavery. They stay on welfare. They stay there because there's opportunities. Because I know I've given people opportunities to do better, but they don't want to do better because it's easy to just sit back and let things get handed to you. And that mindset's been instilled since way back when, because even though David was free, he was like, man, it was a good days where we didn't have to worry about getting nothing to eat. But I'm like, but bro, you was a slave.
Exactly. And he couldn't, and it's like he couldn't, I mean, he said when it didn't make no difference to him whether he was free or not. Yep. Because he said, I'm reading right now from the narrative. I'm going to put it back on the screen and try to highlight what he said. This man said, we had it good in slave days.
Good days again.
This is what he said. He said we had it good. Mm-hmm. Now it's hard to overlook that, but if you look here, he said, but we had right here.
Yep.
But we had good living in slave days. In one sense, we were. Matter of fact, let me see if I can highlight that, because that right there. Let me highlight that. But we had good living in slave days. In one sense, we were better off than after the war because we had plenty to eat.
That sounds familiar. It sounds like some folks that came out of Egypt.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I'm tired of this quail and this manna. We at least had sandwiches back in Egypt.
Sandwiches, leeks and garlic.
Tired of this.
Chipotle.
At least in America, we had DoorDash. Why we over here? We ain't got that no more.
Man,
we had Uber Eats.
You let us off an hour early.
I mean, it kind of remember that old Robert Townsend skit from Hollywood Shuffle.
Yes.
Running on, he said, I don't know why we're leaving Massa. He beat us on Monday, feed us on Tuesday. He good to us, was like, and this is the conditioning. This is the psychological part that really shows slavery to be the cruelty that it truly was, that people often dismiss. Because see, it'll make you get into a fight. Some of y'all so peaceful, but if you were to be dealing with somebody who actually read this, that was of a different ethnic persuasion, they said, see, the slaves was treated good. Yeah, I know right now we be having to do a GoFundMe to get you out of jail.
Well, at least pray for me after I get finished cussing them out.
Because you definitely gonna do that.
Money.
I mean, it was like, and this is a great point here. He was like a domesticated animal. I totally
facts.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
The animal don't know it's domesticated, and neither does the slave that's been truly brainwashed and endeared to their master.
Yep.
They have no clue, and
wow.
It's like when they raise elephants. If they take an elephant and tie it to a post, when it's a baby and it wasn't strong enough to move that post, even though it's a fully grown elephant where it could easily knock that post over, it still won't move off that post because in his brain, he can't move that post.
Right. And then Sister Joy, actually, no, these are written verbatim. They didn't whitewash them because the narratives are mixed. There's some that we have read, because this is Slave Narratives Testimonies number 5. There's some that we have read where the slaves were like, no, we hope that the God judge these white folks. They angry and they like, slave. We hated slavery. One woman, she threw a rock at Ruama and hit that.
Happy day. She fought off them boys that tried to rape her.
Right. I'm glad that they wrote the narratives, I believe honestly, because we needed to see the psychological impact of what happened during slavery.
That's what it is. The psychological impact, because when you're reading and you're seeing this stuff and it's like they acted like it was good days, but then you have to think like they didn't know any better. It's like it was their norm, it was their life. And they had to realize, others did have it a little worse because some didn't get beat or flogged, but still it was like you're still enslaved.
Right.
You're not free, you're not your own person. Oh, that's awful. That's awful. And then it was interesting. This Charles Anderson, Mr. Anderson, he mentioned the patty rollers.
Oh, I knew you was gonna say that. I was gonna talk about that.
The KKK patty rollers.
Where they
rolled up on Negroes forever.
He basically confirmed that the modern day police are descendant from the KKK.
Yeah,
he literally went down the whole line. First they was the patty rollers, then they was this. What was the other name they had for them? Then the KKK.
So that's their foundation.
Yeah.
That's their foundation.
Paddy wagon from. That's really where it comes from. And then we know from reading. And so Game Man, these slave narratives are written down by different reviewers and researchers over a period of time. All right. And so some of the books that I'm using about 3 different books here. One of the books is called Them Days Was Hell. And on the narratives, I actually have where the source comes from at the end of it. All right. And so all of these things are compiled. So here you'll see this is from Them Days Was Hell. And it takes slave testimonies from about 17 different states. Okay. And sometimes where the slave was interviewed is not necessarily where they were kept as a slave. All right. So that's where these narratives come from. And like I said, I'm glad that the narrators or that the interviewees wrote down what the slaves said, and they even wrote down the manner in which they talked without trying to, correct it or fix it. So you can get a feel for what was the people's level of education, how articulate they were or how articulate they weren't. And I actually think that those who did this historical research, whether they were white or black, I actually think they did a good job, because we wouldn't know these stories if they hadn't done it. And so I don't think there was any sinister plot behind it, because like I said, the narratives are varied. And you have some who hate white people and are angry, and it's expressed in there. And then you have these. Now, I picked these narratives that we're listening to on tonight for a reason. And that's because I wanted for us to see as a family together the psychological impact of slavery. All right. Because I have something after everyone is done reading their narrative, I'm going to read an excerpt from a book that's going to help explain these particular things from a psychological, sociological perspective. So there's no conspiracy going on with these narratives. These things are truly recorded according to the way people actually felt and talked. And this is something I've been familiar with since I was a child, because my father was a Black history teacher. And my godfather still is a Black history professor at the University of Illinois. And so, there have been people in my family and stories that I've heard as a child, because I was always around the older folks, that sound similar to these stories. And then for some of us, many of us, if you were to ask questions about your family history, like a lot of us have these stories where your family had to suddenly move from one section to another or go up north, or your last name got changed because some of our relatives wasn't taking it. And they would, and if you killed a white man in the South, you had to change your name and move. And some of us have that in our history. So our people weren't all just docile and laying down and taking things. Some of them fought back, but it was at great risk of their lives. And some of us have grandfathers and grandparents and things who went through that. And I know of many of those stories as well. But these narratives, like I said, because there's some more militant narratives that we have read, and everybody on the panel can attest to that. You know, but these tonight, I picked them for a reason. Because you need to understand that slavery went beyond the skin. It went beyond the lashes on the slave's back. It went beyond it went into their mind. A person whose mind is beaten down is your slave for life, even after they've been given an Emancipation Proclamation. These people were physically free, but mentally they were still slaves. And many of our brothers and sisters are the same way today.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, like so often you see little T-shirts or memes or whatever. We're not our ancestors. You know the things that they went through. We were born in the time that we were born for a reason, because maybe we wouldn't have made it. And we don't know how they fought back. And the only way they could, maybe they put too much whatever is in the food they had to make for the Marsa. You know,
right.
Little subtle ways that they got even, or just you know how they, just to even talk amongst themselves about freedom, making quilts and running away, and what is that thing? Drapetomania, is it called?
Drapetomania?
Yeah, they made a disease and made up a disease and said, well, there's something wrong with you because you keep running away, so you got drapetomania.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Exactly. Isn't that crazy? Made a disease to say something might be wrong with you for running away from slavery.
That's why I don't trust him now. So that's it. I'm so upset about that. That's all I'm saying.
No, but we still see this mindset, and it's still something that they use to this day. And just like how you talk about how all the rebellions are basically quelled from the inside, it's the same thing that they do today. Because we always know we'll trust one of us. But what we got to realize is just because they look like us don't mean that their mindset is like us. Because there's lots of folks that, they straight up full-blooded Hebrew, but they got the mindset of their slave master. I mean, I can think of a bunch of jokers right now that's on TV that, they love throwing on all the news stations. Like one dude, celebrate white people. He's like, oh, I love white people. White people, the greatest, and they're the best. Jesse Peterson. Jesse Peter, every time I hear him talk, like I'm like, dude, you come on, man. That's
like, what is it? Get out. Somebody
doing too much. You know what I'm saying? Always got negative stuff to say about your own people, but you got, nothing but positive stuff to say about other people.
Good. Like, and what about the lady who wrote a letter to all the cops? What state was that? She wrote a letter to all the police officers, thanking them for their service.
Oh yes. I saw it. Yeah. Some black person, I say some dark colored person who's supposed to be us, wrote a letter to 4,000 cops thanking them. That's like saying, oh, thanking Massa for being good cops to us. Oh, I was like, I can't do this.
You let me live after the traffic stop. You didn't kill me. You just tased me a little bit.
What the color of Jesus got to do with it? We always trying to find our identity in something. The color of Jesus don't mean nothing. Just preach the gospel.
He clear.
He clear. He's a clear Jesus.
That's what they told us, right? He clear. That's what they're saying now. He clear now.
He clear.
As long as he ain't close to black or brown, he can be crystal clear Jesus. We got
that's right.
Messiah.
Middle Eastern.
Crystal clear Jesus. Turn the water into crystal clear Pepsi.
No Crystal Light.
That's what they say now. And so I mean, they make it sound like his hair that was like lamb's wool was an S curl or something like that.
It was an S curl. He slicked it back with water.
But think about that. that mindset, like I said, this reminded me of something I saw last year. Again, had to do with police and how uh, a black woman reacted to him. This lady was accused. Her and her daughter went there work went to an Asian hair salon, and the Asians that had accused them of stealing. They did not. They called the police and tried to put the mother basically in handcuffs. The mother is in a panic right now, and she said something obviously out of fear. But she said something that sometimes fear reveal what's really in your mind. She said, "Why are you treating like this?" Say, "I'm your best slave."
I
She said,
remember that. I remember that.
Wow, that's
I
crazy.
Yeah, I remember
remember
that.
that.
Mm.
I
she
That
said
remember
she was a slave to the white police officer.
Mm.
That
Yeah.
broke my heart, but she was absolutely terrified.
Mm. 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 Mm.
and you think about, I remember the story I heard about a young man who was being beat to death by the police officers in Detroit years and years ago, and he kept asking, basically pleading to know what did I do wrong, as if and as they're beating him, it was real sad behind that, and like I said, I'm yeah, and then, I'll say this. This is part of the reason, also too, why early in my faith, I didn't want to have nothing to do with church or nothing,
Mm.
Mhm.
because this impression that I couldn't fight back really was problematic for me.
Yep.
And so Islam was more appealing because, until I learned what the scriptures actually meant,
Mm.
when it talked about, turning the other cheek, and it didn't mean just letting people beat you and abuse you. You have a right to defend yourself,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
you and things of this sort. But the way that we were taught, we were conditioned, and
That's
that's going
right.
to be
that.
brought out.
Docile.
Right. We were conditioned, right, not
Right.
to fight back, and so and that's going to be brought out even more. Like I said, because we still got two more narratives to read, and so we're not done. So next person up, Sister Pam.
Pam in the house.
Yay!
Hello.
Sister Pam is the
Marvelous, marvelous.
next one up, and she's going to be reading to us about Susan Bledsoe. And once again, shalom to all of Yadid that is beloved who are joining us, and from wherever you are. I hope that this is informative, educational, and this is something that you all want to look into. And if you want to know the books that I'm using, you can email me or ask me, and I'll try to put them in the chat, or I'll let you know. But this book, I used three different books tonight. One of the books is called "Them Days Were Hell," and you can buy that book at your local bookstore, or you can get it online and have it sent to you, so you don't have to go out and get around all this COVID stuff. Or you can get it on down. You can download it and have it on your Kindle or your tablet or whatever means you like to read. All right, but we're gonna go with the next one. So, Sister Pam, you are up. All right.
Okay.
So here you go.
All right. August 15th, 1937. Ex-slave interview of Susan Bledsoe, 462 12th Street, Southeast Canton, Ohio. I was born on a plantation in Gaylord County near the town of Elkton in Tennessee on August 15th, 1845. My father's name was Shedrick Daly, and he was owned by Tom Daly, and my mother's name was Redea Jenkins, and her master's name was Silas Jenkins. I was owned by my mother's master, but some of my brothers and sisters, I had 6 brothers and 6 sisters, were owned by Tom Daly. I always worked in the fields with the men, except when I was called to the house to do work there. Massa Jenkins was good and kind to all us slaves, and we had good times in the evening after work. We got up in groups in front of the cabins and sang and danced to the music of banjos until the overseer would come along and make us go to bed. No, I don't remember what the songs were. Nothing in particular. I guess just some we made up and we would sing a line or two over and over again. We were not allowed to work on Sunday, but we could go to church if we wanted to. There wasn't any colored church, but we could go to the white folks' church if we went with our overseer. His name was Charlie Bull, and he was good to all of us. Yes, they had to whip a slave sometimes, but only the bad ones, and they deserved it. No, there wasn't any jail on the plantation. We all had to get up at sun up and work till sundown, and we always had good food and plenty of it. You see, they had to feed us well, so we would be strong. I got better food when I was a slave than I have ever had since. Our beds were homemade. They made 'em out of poplar wood and gave us straw ticks to sleep on. I got 2 calico dresses a year, and these were my Sunday dresses, and I was only allowed to wear them on weekdays after they were almost worn out. Our shoes were made right on the plantation. When any slaves got sick, Mr. Bull, the overseer, got a regular doctor, and when a slave died, we kept right on working until it was time for the funeral. Then we were called in, but had to go right back to work as soon as it was over. Coffins were made by the slaves out of poplar lumber. We didn't play many games. The only ones I can remember are ball and marbles. No, they would not let us play cards. One day I was sent out to clean the hen house and to burn the straw. Well, I cleaned the hen house, pushed the straw up on a pile, and set fire to it, and burned the hen house down, and sure thought I was going to get whipped. But I didn't, for I had a good master. We always got along fine with the children of the slave owners, but none of the colored people would have anything to do with the poor white trash who were too poor to own slaves and had to do their own work. There was never any uprisings on our plantations, and I never heard about any around here where I lived. We were all happy and contented and had good times. Yes, I can remember when we were set free. Mr. Bull told us, and we cut long poles and fastened balls of cotton on the ends and set fire to them. Then we ran around with them burning, a singing and a dancing. No, we did not try to run away and never left the plantation until Mr. Bull said we could go. After the war, I worked for Mr. Bull for about a year on the old plantation and was treated like one of the family. After that, I worked for my brother on a little farm near the old home place. He was buying his farm from his master, Mr. Tom Daly. I was married on my brother's place to Wade Bledsoe in 1870. He has been dead now about 15 years. His master had given him a small farm, but I do not remember his master's name. Yes, I lived in Tennessee until after my husband died. I came to Canton in 1929 to live with my granddaughter, Mrs. Algie Clark. I had 3 children. They all dead, but I have 6 grandchildren, 8 great grandchildren, and 9 great grandchildren, all living. No, I don't think the children today are as good as they used to be. They are just not raised like we were, and do too much as they please. Oh, I can't read or write, as none of we slaves ever went to school, but I used to listen to the white folks talk and copied after them as much as I could. And I'll read the editor's note. The above is almost exactly as Mrs. Bledsoe talked to our interviewer. Although she is a woman of no schooling, she talks well and uses the common Negro dialect very little. She is 92 years of age, but her mind is clear and she is very entertaining. She receives an old age pension.
Whew. Woo, 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 woo.
Uh-huh.
Bravo, bravo.
Very good, Penny.
Excellent,
Woo-hoo.
excellent, Pam. Excellent.
Yay.
Ooh,
But that was
like,
hard.
Yeah.
Man,
That was hard.
Man.
I'm scrolling back up because there's some parts we got
Mm,
to highlight. But Pam,
Highlighted.
Yes.
what were you feeling when you read this?
um, um, it was hard.
Mm.
It was the level of docileness that had been conditioned into this lady. Um, it was it was it was interesting, and there was I I don't know. I would think that if you thought that, okay, I thought I was going to be whipped because I burnt down the hen house. Most slaves, in comparison to, I guess, to where she lived, could have probably been killed for that, or put to
Mhm.
death, or a limb removed, something. And the fact that she didn't get whipped, at least, I guess she must have thought that this is great. This is like, peace compared to what she probably heard was going on other plantations.
Mhm.
Um, the fact that they got a regular doctor if they got sick. I don't know what a regular doctor would have been back then. Um, and the fact that they gave time to have a funeral.
It was
But
so
all of these things, you do enough. If it's like I have a poem that totally speaks to these things. But if you are if if it's like they were given crumbs, and the crumbs was like, oh, let me just um I've glommed onto this crumb in the midst of all of this other stuff, and probably in the midst of hearing what was going on other plantations, and comparing, and in comparison to what was going on the other plantation, we can consider ourselves happy.
Yeah.
Or maybe she was just putting it on for the interviewer. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
because those survival instincts do kick in too.
yeah,
So you just never know.
this is a
That's a
hard
good
one to, and she probably, you look, this is the, to me, on this end, this was the this was the perfect example of how we have learned to code switch.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a perfect example
Mm-hmm.
Facts. That's
Yes,
facts.
Okay.
excellent observation.
That's
of how we have learned the art of code switching.
Mm.
And this is what this sounds like to me.
that is a great point. Wow.
Great observation.
Mm-hmm.
Think of
And
it.
she may have been conditioned in her mind, in comparison to what she probably experienced on another plantation, or what she heard from other people,
Mm-hmm.
because she had relatives on other plantations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, she probably could have thought that she had it good compared to other places. I don't know. It's a hard one.
I mean, for slaves to get a regular doctor, that's almost like you had a slavery HMO or something.
Yeah.
I know.
A regular
Right.
doctor, because they got vets usually, like better little animal doctors or something.
Yeah.
But when you really think about it, in a way, it's no different than how we do now. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go
Hmm.
work over there. They got good benefits over there.
Exactly.
Oh, on this job, you get holidays off. When you really look at the overall working conditions of the day, yeah, it's better than it was during slavery times, but it's really still not ideal. So they just took us
No.
from one form of slavery to the other.
And next,
Yes, sir.
these people work
Yes,
from
sir.
sun up to sun down.
Hmm.
Facts.
Like my mom was from sea to can't see.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah.
From can't
And
see
if,
to
some,
can't see, right?
and if someone died, okay, y'all got to keep working until the
Right.
Hmm.
funeral. It could have been your father, your close relative, even someone you're working with. You're there in the same spot, the same plantation. Oh, you got to keep working, and okay, now you can come look at them or whatever. Okay, you got to go back.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really inhumane. You don't get to
Yeah.
grieve. You don't get to mourn. You just go through the motions. You're just directed.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's how America got and became the greatest nation.
Right.
God bless America.
They
Right.
had a good massa.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They were happy and content. Had good
Mhm.
times. Good
Well, it just showed you
times.
how little you know, the captors could have just treated, how just a little bit of wellness that they could have given them. You know how okay, have you ever heard of the principle, okay, if you treat your workers well, then you
Mhm.
you will get more loyalty out of them, you'll
Right.
get more work out of
Yep.
them. So this is, to me, oh, we're going to give them a little bit of time to have this funeral, or let's get them a regular doctor instead of
Mm-hmm.
having,
The
you know
veterinarian.
one of somebody, yeah, a veterinarian,
Mhm.
or somebody or something, or them trying to figure out on their own. We'll give them a real doctor, and we'll,
They were teaching
let's see what
them
else.
to be
Huh?
comfortable in their captivity, to
Exactly.
become
Mhm.
complacent in their slavery, and not look for an opportunity, to be free. And I mean,
Mhm.
and I mean, you think about it, and there's so many things. Like I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat, because there were some great observations that were being made as well. And I mean how they were dancing and singing and entertaining their master, like the parts that I highlighted up on the screen,
Yeah.
you know, and you see, even though the master worked them from sun up to sundown, as Rama just pointed out,
You had
Their
no
main
baby.
concern was having what they considered to be good food, which was actually the
Mhm.
top. So as much they had enough. I mean, 'cause that's where we get all this soul food stuff that's killing us.
Mhm.
Yes.
High
Yeah.
blood,
Flop.
it's
Mhm.
from the chitlins and all this crazy stuff. That's why we so hog heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we so hog heavy that folks fighting again. Folks will fight you over the pig.
Show
You
will.
know,
Mhm.
and so they as long as they had plenty of the scraps, they considered that
Mhm.
good food. And then they say how like Red pointed out earlier, how Israel coming out of Egypt. We had it better in Egypt, Moses, than we did in this wilderness. And they, and so they whatever made them more comfortable in their
Mm.
enslavement is what they thought was really living the life. They
Mhm.
had no
And here,
concept of freedom.
right. And I've heard this from a number of the narratives we've heard this evening. Where was it? It was oh, there wasn't any jail on the plantation. You know why there wasn't a jail on the plantation? Because the plantation was the jail.
Like, duh.
Say
Yep.
that to us. Say that
And
to
if you cut up, they would just kill you.
Oh
us.
yeah.
Right.
It's all there. You already on the penal system right there.
Oh my gosh. Some of those
Yep.
people were just,
Because legit, that's what the slavery is now today. 13th Amendment, you free until you commit a crime.
Okay.
Right.
and then they make up stuff,
Oh yeah, they'll easily
Yes.
make
You
something up
got to
and put
bust
you
a
in there.
tail light. You
Hmm.
have, like, no, I don't. Yes, you do. Get out of the car. I will shoot you
Yes. That's pretty much it.
in the
Let's make
store.
us some stuff. Hmm.
Make it up.
I mean,
Be declared not guilty.
You ever
that's why I
heard?
said these were more intense than the other ones we've done for me because I'm looking at the psychological damage that's being done to these people,
Mhm.
and there's no concept within them that you're not free.
Yes.
There's
Mhm.
there's a resignation or an acceptance of
Mhm.
them being slaves, and this is truly a form of brainwashing.
Mm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yep.
It is.
Stockholm
Because they're
syndrome.
mentally locked up. I mean, they were given freedom through the war and they were reminiscing about slavery.
Mhm,
In the
exactly.
good old days, they were often you picked a pattern of narratives today because they were all like reminiscing. Those were the good days, and that one gentleman is like, "Well, we had to fend for ourselves." It's like
Hmm.
he was just really living
That's
it up.
called
I
freedom.
guess those
I
were
mean,
good days, good times. We didn't have freedom, but they didn't know they didn't have. Did they not know that they didn't really have freedom, or?
No, they didn't know
No.
because all they've
No.
known all their life was slavery.
yep,
Yes.
It's like when
yep.
you tell people now that you can exist in a society without the government, they be like, "No, you got to have the government to regulate. You got to have the government." No, you don't.
Why? Why do we need the government to do all this
Right,
stuff?
right. Their mind is so
But
enslaved into this system, they think that they need the government.
Because you
right.
gotta
But
have a license for everything,
Come on
and
now,
you have to pay. You never own anything.
you can't
Right.
even go
You buy your
fish.
house outright.
Why do I got to pay the
You just the
state to go
tax.
fish or to
Why do
go
you have to
catch
have
some
a fishing
food?
and gaming? Like, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
but this is the result of stealing babies
Yes.
and putting them
mm,
on ship and leaving the grown-ups and their parents left behind and
mm,
Hmm.
taking them off to
single lady.
plantations and
Mm,
breeding farms to create more babies who have never known what it is to be free
Right.
free, yeah.
or to what it is to be not subjugated.
Yep. And they grow up as slaves. These people all were born in slavery.
Yes.
Yep.
So they don't have a clue
Oh,
what it
this is
was
horrible.
like.
This is
Being
horrible.
free for them was scary. It was like a person who had been institutionalized in prison.
Mhm.
They're
Right.
Yep.
afraid of getting out than they are of staying in.
Mhm.
And that's what we're seeing here. All right, well, we're gonna get to the last one. My brother Aerospike is going to be reading this last one for us. All right, and he's going to bring to us the story of one Mr. John Cameron. And then afterwards, again, brief discussion as we have been. And I'm enjoying this because I'm listening. You all have done such an excellent job, And for me, even though I've read all of these, it's like hearing people read it, hearing the way you all are reading it, it's like hearing it for the first time, And so I truly appreciate you all for doing this and blessing the people, because we are all gleaning and learning from this. All right, so Brother Aerospike, you're up next. I'm gonna go ahead and mute my mic, brother, and you got it.
Ex-slave interview of John Cameron, Jackson, Mississippi. John Cameron, ex-slave, lives in Jackson. He was born in 1842 and was owned by Howell McGee. He is 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighs about 150 pounds. His general coloring is blackish brown with white kinky hair. He is in fairly good health. I always lived right here in Hinds County. I seen Jackson grow up from the ground up. My old master was the best man in the world. I just wish I could tell and make it plain just how good him and Mistress was. Master was a rich man. He owned about 1,500 acres of land, around about 100 slaves. Master's big two-story White House with lightning rods standing all about the roof set on top of a hill. The slave cabin across the valley from Big House was built in rows. Us was allowed to sing, play the fiddles, and have a good time. Us had plenty to eat, clothes, and shoes in the wintertime. The cabins was kept in good shape. Us ain't never mind working for old master, 'cause us got good returns. That meant good living and being took care of right. Master always fed the slaves in the big house. The slaves, they would go early to the fields and work in the cotton and corn. They had different jobs. The overseer was made to understand to be considerate of us. Work went on all the week like that. They got off from the fields early on Saturday evenings, washed up, and done what they wanted to. Some went hunting, fishing, some fiddled and danced and sung, while the others just laid around the cabins. Massa had two of the slaves just to be fiddlers. They played for us and kept things tucked up. How us could swing and step about by that old fiddle music always a going on. Then old Massa come around with his careless smile and jovial spirits. When things went wrong, he always know the way. He know how to comfort you in trouble. Now I was a gardener or yard boy. That was my part as a slave. I helped keep the yard pretty and clean, the grass cut, and the flowers tender and good. I taken that work because I like pretty flowers. I like to build frames for them and to run on and train them up to win round. I could monkey with them all the time. When folks started coming through talking about freeing us and giving us land and stuff, it didn't take with master slaves. Mm. Us didn't want nothing to come along to take us away from them. Them are telling the niggas they get land and cattle and the like of that. It's all foolishness, no how. Us was living in plenty of peace. The war broke out and the whole master's niggas felt. When I seen my white folks leave for the war, I cried myself sick, and all the rest did too. Then the Yankees come through, taking the country. Hmm. Old master refugeed us in Virginia. I can't say if the land was his, but he had a place for us to stay at. I know us raised enough food stuff for all the slaves. Master took care of us there to the war ended. Then he come camp one late evening and told us that we was free as he was. That us could stay in Virginia and work could or could come to Mississippi with him. Might not a whole parcel bundled up and come back and glad to do it too. The all us stayed till family all died. The last one died a few years ago and left us a few old doctors to grieve over. I don't know much about the Ku Klux Klan and all that. They rode about and I wore long white ghost-like robes. They worked folks that had meetings way off in the woods at midnight. They done all kinds of curious things. None never did bother about Moss's place, so I don't know much about them. After the war, it took a mighty long time to get things going smooth. Folks in the government who seemed like they was all upset and threatened like. For a long time, it looked like things gonna bust loose again. Most everything was tore up and burned down to the ground. It took a long time to build back without no money. Then 20 grand old place it was the first time. I married when I was a young man. I was lucky enough to get the next best woman in the world. Oh, Miss was the best. That gal was so good till I had to court her almost 2 years before she'd say she had me. Us had 6 children, 3 of them still living. I can't say much for my children. I don't like to feel hard, but I try to raise my children the best I could. I educated them, even bought them a piano and give them music. One of them in Memphis, another in Detroit, and the other in Chicago. I write to them to help me, but I don't ever hear from them. I was old, they just forgot about me, I guess. That seems like the way of the world now. Everything and everybody's too fast and too frivolous these here times, I tell you. Folks ought to be more like old Massa. I was a Christian and loves the Lord. I expect to go to him for long. And I knows I was going to see my old master and miss this again.
Phew.
Ooh.
Phew.
I would say this just to start the conversation off, and then Errol Sprague, I want you to tell me what you thought since you read it. This one was so difficult for me. I was glad it was over because this man said literally that his slave mistress was a better woman than his wife.
That part right there.
Yes, man.
Go highlight that.
Yeah. That's what this man said. And I mean, this was the amount of brainwashing. And that's what this is, y'all. You're reading the effects of slavery that they don't talk about, what they did to the minds of our people. These people didn't want freedom. They all said they had it better when they were slaves. This man said his slave master and his slave master's wife were the best people in the world.
In the world.
Errol Sprague, brother, what were your feelings, man, on this?
Let me try to get out my feelings to make sure my language stay clean. Okay, so I read this. It hurt my heart. It hurt my heart to hear. Like I said, the first part he said, he found a woman he loved so much, but still think that the missus was better than the woman who gave him his children.
Crazy.
What
Crazy.
the mind says that, and then him to say, "Oh, we don't mind. As long as we was eating, we didn't mind because we was getting good returns." Man, bro. I mean, I want to say some other words, but it's like the the absolute. I mean, it's a form of insanity. It hurt me. Like I said again, I wanted to get done with it too when I was when I was reading it, because like I said, that damage, that psychological damage, so pervasive that you would actually, like I said, that exact 60, that's all they knew. They could not conceive of being free. He said, "You free now. It can have land. You can have the things that basically what you got right now under slavery, except you free." They didn't want it. They didn't care about it. They're like, "No, we're going back." When the master told them, "You is now free as I am," they was like, "No, master, we're gonna go back. We be with you, sir. You loves us, sir." My goodness, how? Just how? In that last sentence, he loves the Lord. He expects to go see him, and his thing was, "I'm going to go see my master." So even after the grave, this man is still thinking, "I love being a slave in eternity." What kind of psychological and spiritual abuse is that to even think something like that? As if anything, I would say, "I'm going to be with the Lord, and I will never see these people ever again." He was looking forward to seeing them, also assuming that they were actually even going to heaven. Yeah, painful, very, very, very painful.
Man,
Got muted.
Oh, he has
Oh,
interruption.
no, y'all keep going. That was my neighbor. Y'all keep. She didn't know I was with you all, but that's all right. Y'all keep going.
yeah, just um, like somebody said in the chat, like I said, that's the state of our people today. It really is. It really has not changed much at all. This, the idea of even leaving America is terrifying to people. Well, what you mean? Where we gonna go? No, man, everything great here, man. Yeah, we
Right.
do get shot down, we get killed by the cops. Yeah, like that, but we got food, and we got 24-hour restaurants. We can eat all the time. We can just go here and go, and not realizing we don't have nothing. We
Yep.
we don't have nothing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a slave mentality, man. It's
Mhm.
this is
It's
honestly
pervasive.
probably one of the worst that I've read about a lot of different slaveries and a lot of different stuff, but this right here, man, like
Yeah.
this is classic, just a mental slavery to have people
Yeah.
so messed up that to see abuse as the best thing in the world.
Mm.
Hmm.
And then so exactly, you see the depths of the trauma that we are still dealing with today.
Mhm.
You know, you
Mhm.
can see the depth of it and how pervasive it is, and how much all the more important it is for us to really be, introspective and work toward healing
Yeah.
in our community.
What is that? When he saw white folks leave for war, I cried myself sick.
Yes.
Just,
Mm-mm-mm.
I mean, I could just see it in my head. And all the enslaved people just crying and snot running, and the ugly cry. Not that cute cry. It's that real ugly from your gut cry. They cried themselves sick. Like they left for war. Oh Lordy, Lordy.
I would just be really
Don't let them come
interested to
back.
know what the plenty was
Yeah.
in comparison to what.
Mm-hmm.
What was the plenty? What was the peace in comparison to what was not peace? That had to been
That's a great question.
if this was peace to him. I can only be. I can't even imagine the level of what was not peace for many.
He said us didn't want nothing to come along and take us away from their master.
Yes.
Mm-mm-mm.
And did you see that all of them left? You know, when they went to Virginia,
With
Yeah.
and
yeah.
And they was free.
they were free, and they were like, they all didn't even think about it. It was a no-brainer. It's like, oh, let's just go on back.
That
Yeah.
shows you the nonsense that
Ah.
that these white folks just don't even understand when they be like, "Oh, we gave y'all freedom, we fought to end the war, but don't see stuff like this. Yeah, okay, you fought to end the war, but you didn't relieve the slavery in people's minds. You didn't teach them what it was to be free and tell them, hey, here, this is your land. You don't got to do this for me no more. No, you just basically said, all right, go take your broken mind and all your broken nonsense and just go.
Yeah, I mean, all that abuse for all those many years.
Mm-hmm.
And then to add insult to injury, wasn't it the plantation owners who got some form of reparation?
Yep.
They sure did. They
Sure
sure
did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They
But if we
sure
bring it up, oh, you're bringing up the past. You know, reparation. How do you know that you was even a slave like that? But yeah, but they got reparations. Okay, slave owners.
And you know, Lynn brings up a good point. This is like we had talked about earlier. This is how Israel sounded coming out of
Yep.
Egypt.
Yeah.
You
No
know,
different.
and Brother Second Exodus, glad to see you taking that break and joining us, man. And he said he's
Hey, shout out to Second Exodus.
Yeah. Shalom, brother.
in a seminary right now, and I'm glad because see, this is an area because I've been to seminary also and graduated, and I'm gonna tell you something. This is an area where seminary fails.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when it comes to addressing these types of inequities and the excuse is, well, we're just here to deal with theology and church history and other things of this sort, these other ologies, within it. But if you don't deal with history and reconcile the mistreatment of people through slavery, and then you also don't look at how white theologians and preachers and society as a whole treated us and try to use the Bible to justify it, then you kind of really doing your seminary students a disservice because this is something that has to be addressed. The scriptures are very clear when it talks about if you steal a man, the penalty is death.
Correct.
That's in the Bible.
Amen.
And this country and all the nations that participated in the transatlantic and the trans-Saharan slave trade, or the Arabic slave trade, as it's sometimes called, they're still under judgment for it. Because look at what it produced, and we're reading what it produced tonight as we read the mentalities that came out of it. Because a lot of this was passed on to the generations, even to our very day. This is what Dr. Joy DeGruy calls post-traumatic slave syndrome. The effects are there, and I mean, they talk about how he loved to play fiddles, and I mean, I'm just going through this.
Playing that fiddle.
They just so happy that they fiddled themselves into ignorance. It was like, they numbed themselves, and there were just parts in this one, man, that y'all, this one this one was rough stuff. And like Yvette has said earlier, we can't be mad at them because they didn't. This is like Sister Ian pointed out. This is all they knew. This is all they knew. So they didn't know better to do better. They didn't know what freedom was.
Right.
They had no concept of it because they were not born free. They were born slaves. And this is the part that I think is the most heartbreaking, of the whole thing. And this is the part that really, tore my heart apart when I was reading through this. And so now, in this final part, y'all got anything else to say before we go to the next part?
Yeah, actually. I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead, bro. Whatever you all got, whatever else you got to say.
No, I was just thinking about when he was talking about his children. I was maybe off from reading into the text, but sometimes I wondered. He said that his children, he would write to them, but they wouldn't write back. I am wondering if it's because of the mentality that he has, and this is the 20th century,
Mm-hmm.
that they said, I don't want nothing to do with that. And they
Right.
see all that oppression, because I mean, Jim Crow was still strong, and they knew Jim Crow was wrong, but they like, but my father seems to be okay with it. He seems to be all right with it. I was going to share a quick story about my godfather, who lived with us. We talked about what happened with the South and what it could do to a mind. I remember being told that he actually came up on basically on a horse and wagon from Georgia up to Illinois, to Chicago, on a horse and wagon. And this was around 1920, somewhere around that. So this was part of the Great Migration. When he got up here, I was told when people talked about, when he was living down south, he was like, man, or he would use other words, he'd be like, I ain't never lived down south. He was straight up denying that he was ever there. That trauma was so much because he was born in 1911. So he was born at a time when all this was going on. So he probably would have seen that, maybe a lynching or seen all that. And so he wanted to put it so far behind him, he would deny that he was actually born down there. He would say that, no, I never been there. Never been south all my life. He would do that over and over.
That's interesting. Malcolm X said, as long as you south of the Canadian border, you south.
Yeah.
And I believe he was right because, a lot of some of the narratives we read has been pointed out. The people were actually up north. There's some narratives that we haven't read yet that come from northern states where they told us there was no slavery. That's a lie.
Correct.
There was even slavery in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol.
Yes, sir.
And they actually gave the slave holders reparations for releasing their slaves. They paid them for their slaves. And we're going to get into that when we probably get into the next narratives. But this was...
So shall we say thank you for your service?
Yeah, this was something, and as Cam too said, it was hard and traumatic for them. And she said, my grandfather was drowned. My great grandmother and my grandpa was sold for $1.25 along with his two brothers. My grandpa.
That is awful.
Wow.
Think about that. Think about that. And I mean, and there absolutely was slavery in New York. Like there was in DC.
Yep.
And Randy, that's a great question.
Wow.
Randy said, was Nat Turner wrong for what he did? Was he? All I'm gonna say is Nat Turner did what he felt he had to do, because them folks were sure doing whatever they wanted to do to our people, and they did to Nat Turner's body some horrible things afterwards. They turned that man into lampshades and pistols and cut off his body parts and all kinds of terrible things.
That's satanic ritual stuff there. When
Yep.
Doing that,
they call themselves Christians.
Straight up witchcraft.
So this last part, all right, I'm going to go ahead and read this in light of what we've just read and heard. And for those that are listening, this will help to bring some clarity to some things, and some things are going to be pointed out. Now, the excerpt that I'm going to be reading from is a book called Brainwashed by a gentleman named Tom Morell. All right, so I'm gonna go right to that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Excerpt from Brainwashed by Tom Morell. Somewhere in our American odyssey, we have turned over control of our lives and destinies, not only to the church, the original leaders of the African American community, but also to the leaders of civil rights and secular organizations. These selected emissaries articulate our frustrations and concerns and tackle racial and social injustices in our name. African Americans have been conditioned to turn their personal power over to men and women who encourage them to wait on God or depend on external forces. The danger of dependency. If implicitly we teach people victimhood as their core self-identification, we are not teaching self-responsibility. We are teaching dependency and impotence. The danger is that they will feel somebody has to do something, and that if the rescuer does not come, they are doomed. This is a quote by Nathaniel Branden. We will look into the origin of the Black church and how it provided the template of leadership for today's Black secular organizations. But we first need to underscore the psychological rewards and costs when one keeps or gives up control of one's life. In our chapter on the African American Achievement Gap, we briefly touched on Dr. Julian Rotter's 1966 internal-external locus of control studies. Rotter basically developed a means to determine high or low levels of control by rating individual beliefs. If someone thinks their life circumstances are under the control of outside forces, they have a low level of control. If, on the other hand, a person believes things happen based primarily on their own behavior and resources or inside forces, they have a high level of control. Those who recognize the power of the inside force are believed to be more psychologically adjusted, have higher self-esteem and influence over others, and accomplish more because they believe they have more control over their lives than those who believe their lives are under the control of outside forces. Pull of the pulpit. In the church and through the minister, you can find all the answers. In fact, they are all written down for you. You don't even have to think your way through the Bible. That's the minister's job. Quote by David, who's a coach. What I find compelling about the Black church is that embodied within its structure are all the key elements of a classic marketing advertising campaign: objective, strategy, and tactics. The stated objective is to spread the gospel and offer solace and salvation. The tactics are multifaceted, ranging from street corner ministries to stadium-sized megachurch services. The pervasive messaging includes books, websites, speaking tours, televised revivals, and more. There's plenty of merchandise to reinforce the brand, including books, videos, and everything else from holy water to holy hankies. If there's any doubt about the institution's marketing power, watch a megachurch worshiping gala on Sunday morning cable. You will see loyal parishioners packed in spacious auditoriums, mass choirs, professional bands, video visuals, praise dancers, praise teams, and a high-tech emotional revival that would compete with any Super Bowl halftime show. This form of church worship has become a master media marketer, delivering influential messages enhanced with holy glitz and pious passion. What may go undetected, however, is another form of the Black inferiority marketing campaign as it pertains to the church. It's God-mandated inferiority. Now, this is what, I'm gonna pause right there. What we saw in the slave narratives, because all those people also were religious. The last slave that we heard from, his wish was to see his master and mistress in heaven. He wanted to see them as bad as he wanted to see Jesus. And why would he have that mentality? Because slavery taught our people God-mandated inferiority. Racism is the true inferiority complex. But through slavery, the tool of religion was used as a weapon to destroy us. And the very scriptures of the Holy Bible that were used for our liberation became a weapon used against us for our enslavement. And it created a whole psychology that went along with it. So I'm gonna keep reading. Come all ye sinners. The implications are there. The implications are there, rather. We are sinners. We can't help it. It is in our nature. So the only medicine, the only way to get right is to go to church every week and get your weekly dose. Dolores. This is a quote from Dolores, a teacher. Mainstream Christianity programmed us to accept and embrace suffering and oppression. Although it's a general religious precept that we are all sinners, Blacks were taught that their skin color and servile position in life were heavenly markers of earthly damnation. The Black Sinners BI, or Black inferiority, programming was so convincing that we ourselves adopted and perpetuated the conviction. Our religious leaders teach the Christian ideal of redemptive suffering as personified in the form of Jesus. We suffer here. We gain salvation in heaven. We suffered enslavement and apartheid dehumanization for our own good. We continue to suffer for our own good. Tom Kratenmaker, an expert on religion and member of USA Today's Board of Contributors, noted that the concept of God standing with the dispossessed against the scourge of dehumanizing racism is deeply embedded in Black religious history. These experts of theological propaganda have an inside track with Blacks whose identity is tightly wound around perceptions of inferiority, poverty, and helplessness. The subtle but inescapable conclusion: should we no longer qualify as oppressed and downtrodden, we would no longer be part of the Christian community. This concept can be traced all the way back to our Christian indoctrination beneath the yoke of enslavement. This is one of the reasons why you embracing your Israelite identity is such a threat, and why people will say things like you're not saved and all of these other types of things. Bred to be led dynamics. All of these things that I'm reading is helping explain some of the mentalities that we just read about or heard from on tonight, and even that we see today. The following bred to be led dynamics reflect our dependence on the hereafter, on Black ministers and Black leaders. They reveal how and why, in this day and age, Blacks are still such loyally conditioned followers. Religious resignation. Que sera, sera. I accept God's will without question. I will wait on God. I will not reach beyond what is given. Addicted to suffering. Wretchedness is my natural state and my birthright. If I suffer gladly now, my reward will be in heaven. Makes me want to holler. The need for preachers or leaders who connect to our emotional vulnerability, then give us hope and lead us through our challenges and troubles. They relieve us of the burden of responsibility. Prosperity gospel. Attachment to ministers who teach and preach the need for greed. We willingly allow them to take congregants' money without benefit for the flock. Leadership dependency. The expectation that organized secular groups will speak and act in our behalf. The sense of helplessness if the organizational leaders do not offer direction or marching orders. Now, let me pause right there. This is what leads us to have this Messiah complex. There's only one Messiah, and that's Yeshua. He's done all he's going to do. He's made promises, and he's going to come back and fulfill those promises until the very end. But for now, he's done what he's done, and we have to believe it and hold on until he does the rest. But instead of waiting on the Most High, again, this is why your Israelite identity is so important, because we do promote the belief in a Messiah, in a Savior who's coming back to save a people that he called out of darkness into his marvelous light. But the world is constantly looking for a man, someone to prop up, to help them. And in the Black community, we do that too often. Our leaders have been assassinated and murdered. There is no more Malcolm X coming. There isn't another Martin Luther King coming. There isn't another Medgar Evers or all these other figures. We have to learn how to depend on the Lord and look for him to come. And we have to strategize and organize as a people if we're going to advance or survive in the days ahead until the Most High returns in the person of Yeshua for us. All those people who I just named and everyone we've read about, they could only do so much. They couldn't do it all, and they can't fulfill what's been promised to us in the scriptures. And so good leaders, and I said this before and I say it again as part of the teaching that I've always done. Good leaders don't teach you to be dependent on them. They teach you to be dependent on the Most High and independent of them, just like you raise your children to grow up as healthy adults, leave you, go off into the world, and then reproduce what you've taught them. Church has become the only institution I know of where you never graduate from. And so it's not preparing people in a large part for the world to come or for the world at large. People are content to have a testimony. I've been a member of this church for 50 years. What did you do in those 50 years? And these are the kind of things that need to be challenged. All right. So let me get back to the book and keep reading. All right. The introduction of plantation style Christianity and the Black preacher, the formation of the Black church and its extension into the civil rights movement, our acquiescence to church and political leaders, all are, unfortunately, branches of a tree rooted in 17th century soil. But before examining the modern day Black church's offshoots and extensions, we must focus on the genesis of the first, most powerful Black force, religion. And before I go to this next part, let me clarify this. Being a member of a congregation for X amount of years, there's nothing wrong with that. But just to be a member, to say you've been a member, there is something wrong with that. Have you been an active part of the ministry? Who are you leading and teaching? Because you should have progressed and grown. You should not be, as the apostle said to other believers, when you should be on meat, you still on milk. And this is what I'm talking about. Is a lot of these ministries aren't developing people to become independent of them and dependent on the Most High, but they keep the people dependent on them, just like a lot of these pastors keep harems of single women who have all these women doting and adoring on them, instead of teaching these women and helping them become wives prepared for husbands, and then teaching these men how to not be so effeminate and punks so that they can be the kind of men that these women are going to need. And you have this celebrity atmosphere in a lot of these ministries. And so it's a hustle going on that people don't see. But I've been behind the scenes. I know that there ain't no wizard behind the curtain. I know that there's just a man, a midget, playing like he's a giant. And it's time that we rip the veil off and show people what's really going on. Because there's a bondage that's being taught in some of these systems that we've been taught and have now held to and defend fiercely out of tradition and not out of truth. All right, let me go back to the book because I'm going to start preaching. Upon this rock, the battle is not yours. It's the Lord's, not yours. Yolanda Adams, the battle is not yours. Y'all remember that, right? What do Nanny Helen Burroughs, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Martin Luther King Jr., former Congressman Walter Fauntleroy, and former executive director of the NAACP, Benjamin Hooks, have in common? All were or are active in the arena of social justice, and all have roots in the Black church. The transition from the church to civil rights leadership is a natural one. The most organized Black struggle was birthed in the Black church. The same theme of oppression and hierarchical redress runs through the arteries of both entities. Like ministers, secular leaders are at the ready to ferret out and confront acts of transgression on behalf of the flock. Like churches, our major civil rights organizations are funded to act for us, not to encourage individual responsibility. In the post-civil rights era, some organizations have attempted to correct educational and economic disadvantage. They attack racial and economic disparities and other important and worthwhile issues, but that's akin to treating the symptoms and ignoring the disease. So in other words, they're giving us a Band-Aid, not a healing. In the 21st century, the problem for African Americans has less to do with blatant racism than with its imprint on our psyches. We've been brainwashed to internalize the myth of inferiority and have not yet wrested our image from the original myth makers. The masses' gift of religion wasn't to empower, but to contain, to keep the slaves' attention heavenward. The term Black leader, now listen to this, is deep. The term Black leader is a throwback to a time when the slave master designated one slave as his spokesman or spy. Let me highlight that, because this right here blew my mind. Did y'all hear that? Let me read that again, just in case you missed it. The term Black leader is a throwback to a time when the slave master designated one slave as his spokesman or spy. Do we have to go there? It is possible that these seminal African American institutions also play a part in the brainwashing process. To many, the very suggestion is tantamount to attacking the church and civil rights organizations and all of their considerable contributions. It's one of those don't go there subjects. We have been programmed to be so defensive about all things Black, the mere topic threatens to become another zero-sum game. You're either for it or against it, pro-religion or anti-religion, pro-Black or a sellout. Even so, I maintain that it would be a disservice to our people if we did not examine the complicit role of churches and secular organizations in the BI campaign. BI means Black inferiority. It would also be an incomplete exploration if we ignored how those roots over the years have grown a branch of what Minister Claudette A. Copeland calls toxic churches, in which pastoral care has come to mean care of the pastor with no guarantees of care by the pastor. My goodness. This chapter is an attempt to dig up the soil to examine the roots, to replant and fertilize the crop for a bumper yield. The Black church and secular institutions have been and continue to be major forces of great power and influence. But as the old saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. God sanctioned servitude. And this is the last part. Seems like niggas just got to pray. Half their life am in praying. Some nigga take turn about to watch and see if Martha Tom anyways bout. Then they circle themselves on the floor in the cabin and pray. They get to moaning low and gentle. Someday, this yoke won't be lifted off our shoulders. William Moore, WPA Slave Narrative Project. To keep his property under control, the slave master routinely stamped out any sign of emerging leadership. Thus, he was able to train slave leaders who fit his agenda and destroy those who did not, wrote leading Black psychologist Dr. Naim Akbar in his essay, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. Most slave owners, however, relied on another popular means of control, religion. Here, it's important to state the obvious. Slaves were taught to worship a white savior, even though the literal biblical description is of Jesus as a swarthy Middle Easterner. Most available images present him as Nordic, Germanic, blue-eyed, blonde, unambiguously white. With this slanted depiction is the assumption that Jesus's father, God, shares his son's pigmentation. Slaves were taught from both testaments of the Bible that a vengeful God created them to be perpetual servants of his superior white children. This reliance on religion as a controlling force introduced what historian John Hope Franklin described as the third strand braided between our enslavement and our liberation. Once the planters were convinced that conversion did not have the effect of setting their slaves free, they sought to use the church as an agency for maintaining the institution of slavery. Ministers were encouraged to instruct the slaves along the lines of obedience and servancy. With subtle manipulation, slave owners and preachers used Bible passages such as Colossians 3:22 to validate the wretchedness of the enslaved. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. We've heard this scripture before, right? By the beginning of the 19th century, the strange braid of African American Christianity was clearly established, a liberating impulse entwined with an enslaving constriction. Noah's curse, or the curse of Ham, central to slave Christian teaching, was but one convenient contrivance used to drive home the message of eternal black servitude. Though nothing in the passage states or even remotely suggests skin color, from medieval times forward, the passage was used to explain that dark-skinned people were the result of a curse from God for licentious behavior. Christianization of slaves boomed after the religious revival movement, known as the First and Second Great Awakenings, swept through the South in the late 1700s. The enthusiastic form of worship, singing, shouting, dancing, hand clapping, and the teaching that blacks like whites could receive personal salvation appealed to slaves. Large numbers adopted the predominant religion of the slave master, the Methodist and Baptist faiths. Still, blacks openly accepted the premise that God allowed their enslavement so that they could gain the benefits of Christian salvation. Of course, black abolitionists and some black preachers railed against this notion. Nevertheless, even when rejecting a racist God and using Christianity to promote liberation, a seed of self-loathing remained, the idea of blacks as uncivilized lesser beings in need of the white savior. And so that is the excerpt in its entirety that I wanted to read from. There's more, which we'll probably glean from on the next go round. But I wanted to conclude with that because in some way it addresses the mentalities that we just heard in the slave narratives. We see that there was a psychological game that had been planned and plotted against us, in which the roots run so deep, that rabbit hole go down so deep, it go past Alice in Wonderland. Mm-hmm. And we're living here now in the West, whether it be in the Americas or on the European continent, and we went way past Wonderland. And a lot of us still wondering what's going on. But this is the kind of thing that has happened.
Yes, sir.
Because we become victims who have been taught to accept our victimization, just like these slave ancestors that we just read from. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I see a lot of these politicians, especially the black ones. And I can tell you, a lot of them are not doing the job. But they're so popular because they're black, and because Atlanta's a chocolate city, it's hard to get them out of place. And yet people keep wondering, why haven't things changed? And that's many times because the so-called leaders are part of this very system that we just read about. Mm-hmm. You know, and the name of the book that I was reading from, Sister Yvette, is Brainwashed. by Tom Burrell. All right. And so this is a lot of what we see. A lot of what we see. So thoughts, comments.
They've had a long time to study us and construct lots of systems to keep us in the dark and hidden and subjugated. And just even spending time talking through these slave narratives, they even suppress just these things. And if these things were allowed to be looked at and shared on a larger scale, a lot of us in this community would get a clue. And possibly be the catalyst to people actually realizing who they are and where they've come from. It makes it easier. It would make it easier for them to be able to believe Deuteronomy 28. Yeah, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you see? Has anybody else in this entire world been through this? But because you don't know any of these accounts, any of these stories, how can you sit here and say, oh, I'm not it's easy for them to say, oh, that ain't me, I'm not the people, because you haven't even heard your history.
That's very true.
Yeah, not the real history. Like I said, the only history we've ever heard was you got enslaved and then you got freed, and then Martin Luther King and the Barack Obama. Okay, there's your history. You're done.
True story.
They even went as far as changing the definition of people. They break everything down to race. I remember as kids hearing kids tell me, oh, I'm Italian, or oh, I'm this and I'm that. And, me and all my black friends like, oh, you white. You just white. What you talking about? You white. Not knowing, because we the ignorant ones, they were right. It's about ethnicity. Not all white people are created equal, just like not all black folks is created equal. And then when you find out that, oh man, all these genocides in Africa was Hebrews, people that we was related from, and you start connecting all the dots and stuff, you see why they do all this nonsense. So you start getting to the depth of the nonsense that they have dug to keep us blind and subservient. I mean, even now I'm still dealing with people in the church mentality. There was a gospel singer just recently who came forward just telling the truth. I mean, they may not like it because she used some colorful language, but she just straight up told the truth about the whole industry. And people mad at her because they don't like the way she said it. Oh, you should have said that different. Oh, you just pray for them people. Oh, you get up that business. And it's like, come on now. you were worried about her, and you more looking at what she's saying versus, what she's heard versus looking at the people, the ones who's supposed to be the leaders, the one who are supposed to be the ones praying for people and guiding people, how they abusing these people and doing. She exposed some stuff. The church has done a number on us as a people.
Yeah, and the thing about it, what you were saying, somewhere what you just said, man, it just hit me, because it's like we want to shut people up and shut them down because of the way they say something.
Yes.
Yeah. We're making excuses to ignore people and write them off.
Yes, exactly.
And this is like one of the things when I was doing a lot of evangelism early on, like out in California in the hood. Man, I'm not going up in certain neighborhoods telling them OGs and them YGs how they can and can't talk when we talk about God. These dudes all carry guns, and I'm by myself.
Now, brother, old dog. Yeah, we're using that language.
That gospel.
Yeah, some things don't. And this is the thing. Let's say some things don't work. Like folks think. So if the brother cussing or saying the man upstairs or the big homie God or stuff like, I'm not trying to tell him, hey brother, don't talk like that. I'm gonna talk to that brother at the level that he's at, and then try to bring him up slowly over time.
Right.
That's right.
Because what I'm listening for is, do he even acknowledge God? Because the scriptures say in Hebrews chapter number 11, verse number 6, he that cometh to God must first believe that he is. So if the man believes that he is, well, let's start right there and work.
That's right.
And I'm not his English teacher. I'm not marking up his mouth with a red pen saying you can't talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Because these become obstacles and tools now that we use against people to not minister to them. And this is why a lot of our people are sleeping in ignorance and not woken up.
That's true.
Facts.
And so all of these vices, all these angles and things have been used against us. And it's certain things, like this is why we have a black bourgeoisie and then the rest of us. And the black elites or the bourgeoisie, or be that mentality, where did it come from? It came from black folks who learned from white folks.
That's right.
Yep.
It came from who were treated better, like some of the ones we were reading about tonight. I never got a whooping. So now you think, what? I never got beat, but other slaves got beat. One person said they deserved it. And all these things. I love our master. I married the best woman, but she only second best to my wife. I mean, my wife is second best to my slave mistress.
Yeah.
You're crazy. That mentality.
Insane.
Because, when you teach a white savior, hey, that's the standard.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's the standard. So I need to acquiesce to the standard and do what they do and be like they are. So that I can get ahead, so I can have success. That's the standard of success. That's that's been taught and drilled into me.
Yes.
Right.
That's facts. Because when I graduated out of college, I cut my hair because I knew that white people didn't like it when your hair was long. I had a big old afro and stuff, was sometimes weird in braids, and I ended up cutting my hair because I was like, hey, I gotta be a grown man and do grown man things. That's what I said. But what it really was is I was making sure the white folks was comfortable. Because when you come around with your locks in there, they get a little intimidated, nervous. They feel some type of way. When you come looking like
you're
yourself.
a threat.
Yeah.
And on your size too.
Yes.
Exactly. That too. Because I'm a tall brother, wide shoulders. Oh yeah, they see me coming in there. Oh,
yep. We're in the same boat.
Big red.
And, I work in corporate America.
Big red.
I like teasing them.
I mean, I worked in corporate America around all them, man, and they all, they always say they little slick stuff, little things. I remember one lady said me and these two other white dudes walked in. She goes, "Oh, beauty, brains, and brawn." Guess who was brawn?
See?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they always look at the brothers as mandingos.
Or
you got to be able to play basketball.
You play ball? You play ball?
Football.
Yeah, everybody says I play football. Nobody says, "Oh, you look like you work in the IT field." Nope, it's always football. What team you play for?
You got to play ball. You got to do something.
No, he plays cricket
for their entertainment.
Right.
Yeah, you be like,
sing? Can you dance? Do you rap?
Right.
Exactly.
When you say you play music, it's like, oh, you play R&B and hip hop? No.
I listen to classic jazz, or classic music. I'll have you start naming stuff. They'd be like, "What?"
I listen to bluegrass.
And so they think that and that's the thing. If you all go back and look at what happened immediately after the end of the Civil War. Our people recovered so fast and made gains so fast that it scared white folks into creating Jim Crow.
That's because we was doing all the work.
Exactly. We knew how to do everything.
We had the skill sets. We was the ones with the skill sets doing all the work. So it was easy for us to, once given some resources, hey. And so they realized that. So here's just what happened. They realized that And so this second time around, oh, you don't really need to learn those skill sets right there. Let's get you over here and do this right here and be content with
Mhm.
this thing right here, and not allowing you to go and collect those skill sets, right? That will help you to be able to do something with your hands and maintain something, build something. Because today, a lot of our kids today don't know how to, they don't know how to do a lot of things,
Right.
They
if you
demonized
will.
trade schools and
Correct.
Yes.
pushed the
Correct.
push for
Put
educations and
Yeah,
degrees.
yeah. Go to the 4 year college there and get your 4 year degree,
Hmm.
in philosophy, in history. And I'm not knocking philosophy and history. I'm
Right.
just
Right.
saying, have know how to work with your hands.
Correct.
But the thing is, they help us get educated just so they won't give us no job.
That's right.
Correct.
So all these
Yep.
educated black folks were walking around here unemployed.
Hmm.
So, but the trade thing is something that we do need to look at. And then on top of that, everybody is not meant for college.
Nope.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
So, college is not for everybody. So we have to be able to, yes, push some of our people in, go into a trade, become an apprentice,
Hmm.
to someone, learn how to, become a carpenter, a contractor, build, electrician. There's all kinds of things that, we can do. And at one time we had people that were able to do these things,
Yep.
Mhm.
but we got integrated out of
Yes.
Mhm.
our own, communities basically.
Yep.
And,
Mhm.
we didn't need integration. What we needed was we needed desegregation in order to allow equal access.
Yes.
Exactly.
But but it seemed like after, and that's why Martin Luther King that's really why he was murdered. He wasn't murdered because he had a dream. He was
Hmm.
murdered because he woke up.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I've integrated us into a burning house. When he condemned his own dream and called it a nightmare, that's when they put the bullets in the gun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you don't hear that speech of his talked about as much as you
Mhm.
hear "I have
I
a
have
dream."
a dream.
Right.
Right.
They want to teach equality.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so so it's a lot of things that we have to go back and re-examine. But there's some things too when it comes to, I believe, like what Brother Burrell was putting in his book. There's an accountability that we have to demand from our institutions,
Yes.
like church, and from our black civil and social organizations, because there's a lack of accountability in large part. You can see it in a lot of these, for instance, ministries. When the leader mess up, like for instance, if they mess somebody over or mess up with somebody, the tendency has been to condemn the victim, save the leader.
Yes.
Hmm. That's
Uh
it.
huh.
So
That's
the victim
exactly
can
it.
run out the congregation or mark with a scarlet letter or have all kinds of rumors spread about them. The congregation turn on them. And then everybody go, we got to cover the pastor. This is an attack of the devil. No, the pastor was the devil that was doing the attacking. Get
Yeah.
that Negro out, and keep the member and get a new pastor. You know what I mean? And so, but see, because we've been taught and conditioned a certain way, we don't do those things. And that's one of the issues too, is we got to deal with the accountability in our community
Yes,
and in
sir.
our institutions.
Mhm.
That has to be done. And a lot
Mhm.
of it though has come up again, the brainwashing, the conditioning, and then look at who many times helped found a lot of these organizations. We have copycatted and imitated white organizations
Yep.
trying to integrate we trying to be just as good at being white as white people. So we got the Divine Nine, the fraternities and sororities.
Ooh.
Mm.
Hmm.
Black
Hmm.
folks
Yeah, I know
Mm.
some.
Greek,
Yes, sir.
and I ain't trying to offend nobody. I'm just trying to tell the truth. If the truth offends you, then say ouch and then get it right with God, but not don't get
Mhm.
mad at me, you know. But we try to be just as good a Greek as white folks are.
Come on now.
We everything they have, we just try to duplicate it. We now, even in a lot of these denominations, we still wearing the clerical roles of Catholicism,
Yes, sir.
and European paganism, and performing a lot of the rituals and not going according to the biblical pattern. And we want to be free and liberated, but we still practicing many of these things that were passed down to us by our oppressors. We're still teaching, our people to, not defend themselves, to be docile, to sing. This is, and me and my dad, before he passed away, we used to argue about this. And I used to tell him, I'm not singing "We Shall Overcome."
Uh,
I said, man, and my reason has always been, my father used to laugh. I said, Dad, when I was in the Marine Corps and I heard them folks singing "Praise the Lord" and "Pass the Ammunition," that's when I decided I would never sing "We Shall Overcome" again. So we overcame, and that's because we need to be praising the Lord and passing the ammunition.
That's right.
And so I was like, our songs even generate a certain psychology that we just shuffle and step and sing these songs that sound almost like funeral dirges. While the opposition or other folks is saying, "Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition." And we sit with them, we go, you ain't gonna overcome folks that's passing ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
And they praising them while they doing it. So, and we sit up here shuffling. So no, I don't want to do all that, but there's some things that we got to wean ourselves off of. And the only way we can do it is we got to learn truth. And we got to hear this history. Like Sister Pam said, people don't know their history. A people ignorant of their past will not have a future, because you'll be lost in your present forever, turned in circles by the people who are pulling your chain. They got you in bondage, you don't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that's the sad part. When I think about the churches, what you were saying earlier. Like I said, especially black churches, they're so in tune with the particular political platform. If you say anything against the people that they support, oh, you say, oh, well, you're one of those troublemakers. Oh, you must be on the other side. The one starts with the R. You must be that. And it's like, no, I just heard these folks say America is not a racist nation. I just heard them say this, who's supposed to be on the side, and the church is, say, hey, went after these folks and vote for them. It's like the insanity. The insanity is just too much for me. That's why I walked away from all of it. It's like I can't do it. I don't know how other people can, but I cannot do it.
Especially after just seeing that thing Kenneth Copeland just had with Michael Flynn over there and a whole bunch of other cats. They was out there singing the old, what you call it, national anthem. It's not national anthem. What's that one song? I won't forget the men who died, who took that right for me. That crap. They're in there. Yeah, they're in there singing that trash.
I don't even know what that is.
I can't remember what it is. I know the some of the words, but I just can't remember the name of that dumb song is. But
They
it's
were singing dumb stuff.
the American rally
I'm proud
cry,
to be an American.
that one.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Well, at least I know I'm free if I'm white. And,
If you were white in America,
if I'm white or bow down to the white man. But they were in there singing this song with their hands up like they were praising God. Like they're all in this building with their hands up like they're praising. And I'm like, that's not a praise song. What are you worshiping? They worship this nation.
Pretty much.
dear Jesus.
And then the crazy thing is they call it a God. They keep saying, "Oh, it's a nation that was built on godly principles."
Why do they say that? Where did they get that from?
Like, what are you smoking?
It was not. It
Depends on what God it is.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true.
exactly.
The Baphomet. Yes.
Mm.
It was
I'm
built
like,
on the Baphometal principles.
when did Yahuwah have a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on the top?
No.
Well.
Well, I can tell you this point, I'm gonna reiterate before we get off of here, but what he says, we've been brainwashed to internalize the myth of inferiority. And that's what we saw in the slave readings.
Mm-hmm.
They felt inferior and they were okay with it, because they said they had good masters, plenty to eat, didn't want to leave, cried when the white folks went off to war, couldn't wait to get to heaven to see their master again. Had a wife, but she only second best to my slave mistress. You know, slaves got whippings and they deserved it. We heard this from slaves, from former slaves tonight, because they were brainwashed to internalize the myth of inferiority. And then he said that, and we have not wrested our image from the original myth makers. Who created this myth? The people who truly felt inferior.
Yeah.
Racism is not a superiority complex, it's an inferiority complex. And so you go out and brutalize and mistreat people who you feel inferior to and try to flip the script on them because you see them as superior to you. And this is what we've seen happen. And so they use reverse psychology on us, called us beasts, called us savages. We had civilization when they did not have it. We taught them, we saved them from plagues and all kinds of other things. It should have been an exchange of culture and information, but instead the inferior culture, and this is the true act of savages, because civilization means you act civil, correct?
Correct.
You
Right.
don't go to somebody else's house and act savage and then call them the savages when you're the one beating them, killing them, stealing their land, enslaving their people, raping their women, and brutalizing them, using them for alligator bait, buck breaking their men to humiliate them, making them perform acts of incest to breed slaves for your benefit, and things of this sort, not teaching them how to read, keeping them illiterate so you can keep them ignorant, so you can continue to dominate and control them, pitting them against one another, separating the light skin from the dark skin, and then treating this one better than that one, where you sanction adultery yet go to church on Sunday because the master got slave children and the mistress is fine with it because she get to have her time with Mandingo. Yet his children are born slaves, but they valued the white woman so much to try to devalue the black woman that the children of a white woman by a slave man were born free because they valued the white woman. She was the prize. These are the kind of things that have been generated by society. So when they tell me America is a Christian society, my question is when?
Right.
When and how? Because we don't see vestiges of Christianity in this country from its inception. I don't care what that preamble says, what that Constitution says, what that Declaration of Independence says, or what any of those slave-owning founding fathers said. Because these guys were hypocrites. And even the ones that didn't own slaves, that didn't make them better than the ones that did, because they didn't care that the other ones did. And they were all in it to win it for the money and for empowerment over people. And so when you think about these things that have been done, there has to be a reckoning. And then he said the master's gift of religion wasn't to empower, but to contain. And how do you do that to people? By making them illiterate. In other words, the slaves that were brought here, our ancestors that came were literate, they just didn't know English. So they had to learn a whole new culture. And then after breeding slaves for several generations now, you're now breeding people who are born into ignorance.
Yep.
So now these next generations of slaves are illiterate. And then they start to lose their history, their culture, and things of this sort, because you start to sell them from here to there and everywhere. And they start to lose contact and connection with their people. And so they have to struggle and strain, but through it all, our people continue to fight to hold on to who they were and find some semblance of identity and continue to try to call out to the Most High for some salvation. But the society that dominated us didn't give us the Bible to empower us. They gave it to try to enslave it. In fact, they rewrote it. They did what the Bible says don't do. They wrote a slave Bible. They literally did that.
Yeah.
And so it says, but to contain, to keep the slaves' attention heavenward. So they wanted us to think about pie in the sky, where they ate all the pie here and made us cook it. Right? And Yeshua said, I promise you a hundredfold in this life, not just in the one hereafter. So there's a promise for us here, not just way up there in the yonder, in the sweet by and by. And then the last part I thought was very interesting, and this is a great point Brother Burrell makes. He says the term black leader is a throwback to a time when the slave master designated one slave as his spokesman or spy. And the next time we do these excerpts, because that's a great point, But this point is going to be brought out more. Now that doesn't mean you need to go stop calling people black leaders and whatnot, but understand the etymology of the psychology behind the terminology. I know I was in prison, didn't I? You know how to do it. but understand the etymology and the terminology and the psychology behind it. All right. Because everybody that is propped up by, if someone is propped up by a group of people outside of your people to be your leader, they are not your leader.
That's right.
Correct.
Amen.
Simple. All right. And so, and so we have to be very discerning. So these things, are things that stuck out to me in all of this. So family, so this is definitely something that, like I say, I want us to continue to do these things, and because this is serious stuff.
That term that the gentleman had made was very true, because the first leader of the NAACP was a white dude, and the person who took over after him was a black dude, but he was totally dedicated to the one dude that just left, the white dude. And it's been like that ever since. Every time they get somebody as a leader of the NAACP, they're propped up, just like you said, by members outside of our community.
Right.
Yep. This always happens, and so I mean, these are things that like I said, we got to remember. So, well, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this to a close, because I do have a meeting, also a Zoom meeting, to be on with Sister Shonda, and I think Sister Ruama probably already headed on her way over there. But we almost been on here for 3 hours. I want to say again to the panel, you all did an outstanding job, on reading on tonight. And these are probably the hardest narratives for us to have read, on tonight, because I know they were hard for me to read through. I was like, woof, this is something else, and so it's definitely, something that I want to continue to be consistent on. And we're going to come back and do part 6, and we're going to keep pushing on with this. And so I want to say thank you again to the panel, man. And y'all say something to the people before we go ahead and get off.
Well, it was a pleasure. I truly appreciated sharing this platform with everyone once again, and just to spend time in fellowship and learning more about our history. Hearing some of the voices of our ancestors, and it's been a blessing to be able to and an honor to be able to participate and receive so much good information, and just knowledge of what our family has gone through and what we're still reeling from, some of the ramifications of that. So just looking forward to it, and love y'all. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Amen. Brothers?
Well, I was going to say again, I echo Sister Pam's sentiments again. Thank you for for putting this together, and having us being able to again read things again that were very painful to hear, but true, and they need to be heard because before you can heal, you have to hurt, and that means you're reading things that are painful and studying them. And like I say again, thank you for the panel. That you guys were awesome. I was enjoying every single reading. Everybody here, I was absolutely loving it. Thank you for the people who in the chat who showed up and was giving the feedback and everything. Love you and appreciate you, and hope to see you guys soon.
All right.
I'm gonna say thank you, man. I always learn when it come to these. These are like history lessons, man. I really love them. I'm always learning, and it's always good to hear, through the panel, hearing them. It's like hearing, your ancestors tell you history. So I really, thank you, Mr. Black Tax, for even doing this, because, like I said, it's a history lesson, man. Everyone that we've done this, I've walked away with something new that I didn't know. So I think this is great.
Man, well, I want to say again, thank you to you all. Thank the Most High for you all, beloved, because I have really been blessed, and like I said, I enjoy the time of fellowship. Anytime we can get together and do this is always a blessing to me, and I'm so grateful for you all to come on, and be willing to do this, and give us that labor of love. And so I just want to thank you all again, and as I always say in the end, we're not always right and others aren't always wrong, which is why we do the research and why we continue to fellowship and exchange ideas. And we're going to give you some scripture before we leave, even if it's at the end. John chapter 5, verse 39. Let's remember, search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. Who's the me? That's our Lord and Savior, Yeshua. He's the one that ultimately is the liberator from all manner of slavery, whether it be physical or psychological. He has the keys to set us free. Acts chapter 17, verse 11, those keys are in the scriptures. And all we got to do is the example set here. Now, these Jews were more noble than those in Thessalonica. Why? Because they received the word with all eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. So with that said, beloved, and without any further delay or ado, until the next time, I bid you all shalom, and I pray nothing but the best for the blessed, and truly you are the blessed of the Most High and the apple of his eye. So until next time, beloved, shalom.